Hello everybody, and welcome to the LJL Officially Unofficial Podcast. I am still your host, Alex, otherwise known as Lexico by MaskedSwan on the internet. I am, of course, joined by the fortuitous Sam Initia1ise Hapgood, and
fortuitously here,
the remarkable Alex Nymaera Hapgood. Gentlemen, episode 15 marks the full end of everything. We're now putting a bow on the spring split of 2020. We did it. We've actually done it now. We're now fully done. We're now doing a recap, which means we're actually done.
We're out. I know. What do we do with that?
It's not done until the recaps happen. So, like, this is it.
Almost.
End of the line for spring.
But yeah, gentlemen, welcome to the podcast. I'm honestly just so glad that we've got here and that we actually now get to look back over our past thoughts, opinions, when we knew so much more or less, rather, as some could say, about the LJL. Ignorance truly is bliss. But gentlemen, what is this podcast? Nymaera, what is the podcast?
So, obviously, I am Nymaera. What is the podcast? We cover everything about the LJL in the English language. We do that. We've taken it upon ourselves to say, look, no one's doing English content for the LJL. Let's go cover some Japanese League of Legends, and that's what we've done.
All of us? All three of us?
I know.
That's it.
Wait, but then Initia1ise, we must be something to do with Riot, right?
Yeah, no, we're not. This is actually off our own backs. We're doing this by ourselves. Like, how? It's incredible, isn't it, really?
And are any of their partners involved with us? In, like,
No, not at all.
Oh, no.
Look at that. But then that does mean all of our views and opinions are our own. We get to say anything, but granted, that doesn't take into account the LJL Officially Unofficial. This does not represent that either, the brand itself. This is our own personal thoughts and echo chamber where we get to say whatever the devil we want, and if you don't like it, you can just hang up. But don't. First rate us 5 stars on iTunes, on the Apple Podcast, and then you can go, because whatever after that. By the way, you can obviously check out all of our social media channels, Twitter, Instagram, Discord. We have several options, either in our show notes, which you'll be able to find there, or in the description below if you're on YouTube, or you can just see it on our screen of @Nymaera, @Initia1ise with a 1 for the L, or @MaskedSwan for myself, and the LJL Unofficial for our Twitter, and LJL_officially_unofficial, or if you just type in LJL Unofficial, you'll find all of our social media things, relatively speaking. This podcast does go out on all audio major streaming platforms, and still pretty good thing, only on the up and up with the downloads, so we're doing something right, relatively speaking.
Hooray.
And obviously, it's been a few months that we've been doing this, so just look after yourselves, everybody. You know where. You don't need me saying the echo chamber of everything. Just take care, social distance, and listen to the World Health Organization as best as possible.
Local authorities.
Yes, Queen. But with that all said, gentlemen, this is going to be our recap episode, as we've already alluded to, and I'm really excited to be going through this. We're going to look off at first and see the success or failings that the LJL was as a tournament this spring split, looking over how things have changed, the difference between this and previous splits, and also looking forward what we think will be happening. We're then also going to revisit all of our pre-season expectations from our tier list that we did in episode 1. God, 14 episodes ago is a little bit crazy.
How much content have we done since then?
A lot. Back then, that was only the podcast we had to think about. Now we've casted all the games.
Wiser.
Oh yeah.
At least older. They've had 2 birthdays. Definitely older.
Oh, 100%. 100%. We're in our teens now. Like, we're 15. We're
This
all...
is the point we get really
Crazy.
awkward.
We're getting old.
Our voices are breaking.
I mean, that still always happens for me. I mean, my voice sometimes just cracks unexpectedly, even at my mid-20s. We're going to be polite and call me that. So it's all over the place. We'll also be alluding to that episode 1. If you're not interested in listening to it, which we can somewhat understand, it definitely had those early LJL Officially Unofficial kind of tidbit kind of hiccups.
Honest.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually went through each of us and listened to that episode ourselves, kind of just to refresh and think what we originally were doing. And we've got our hot takes, which Nymaera will be assisting us with
we'll
playing.
get to
Spice
kind
is
of
one way of putting it.
Yeah, we get to flame our previous selves.
And then to end us off, we have got a little bit of news, just to kind of have a nice little end to the conversation, so it's all not just us flaming ourselves and also just kind of recap. It's just nice to also put a bit of news out there. And if you are interested in keeping up with the news more in an up-to-date source, either follow us on Twitter or join our Discord, where all breaking news always does get broken within the LJL. But first, gentlemen, I think that's enough of me talking for about 5 minutes in total, as we went through this as fast as we could.
Going through the motions.
Very much so. Let's talk about the success and or failings, in our opinion, on the LJL tournament, starting with the schedule for the regular season and spring split being different as it was.
I've written down a page of notes on how much it was an interesting experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
So obviously, this is the first time that we had covered an LJL split. It's just the three of us, and that means that when you have certain things about the schedule, which cram a lot of games into a very short period of time, it's not necessarily good for us as, you know, a broadcast, but we'd like to explore both ends of the coin as a viewer and a broadcast, I guess. Just try and think about it from as many perspectives. So what exactly do you guys want? So what about the schedule, Sam, have you written down first, do you reckon?
So it's
what's
worth
the
pointing
first
out
thing?
that
The
it
first
was
bite of the
7.
pie.
Yeah, it was 7 weeks worth of games, but it was put into a timescale that was from the 8th of February to the 8th of March. And remember, February is a very short month. That is a
4 weeks
lot of
solid,
weeks
yeah.
of games to fit into 4-ish weeks.
Wait, hang on.
Yeah, no, that was ridiculous what they did to us. We had Super Week at the end, obviously on the 7th and the 8th to round it all off.
Yeah.
We had
Weeks
what
1
we
to
had
3.
week 2 and week 3, where basically we had back to where we had 2 again in another week. So then by that point,
Yeah.
it's like, well, you kind of get through it, but
That's 56 games in 4 weeks.
basically,
Yep.
Isn't it?
Yep.
What? 7 times 8, because you've got 8 games a day for 7 weeks, and then that's in 4-week thing. That's 56 games in 4 weeks.
So yeah,
That's nuts. That's
week
nuts.
1 was on week 1 was on the 8th of February. Week 2 was on the Tuesday, at like 3-4 days later, if I can count. 3 days later. Well done, Sam. He says, hopefully getting that right. And then week 3 was on that Saturday. It's like, that's a very compressed time schedule.
Okay.
I mean, reflecting on, let's say, the LGL summer 2019, was it like that? Do you know?
I don't believe it was quite that compressed, but I'll double check again, because it's one of those things saying that and then like
You asked the
looking
question.
back with rose-tinted glasses.
The man,
of course,
the man
I
that has a
wasn't
page.
casting it.
I assume he had
I
already
know.
done this. He
I
doesn't-
know. I done it specifically for 20. I done it specifically for this one. I'd like. I'll have a double check.
I feel bad by
so,
putting
okay,
my.
You caught me off guard because I was. I
Obviously,
know.
yeah, but obviously not everything was the same in the regular split, because we'll talk about playoffs a little bit later. But in terms of just the regular season, right? So this split, the LJL moved from what they had before was a triple round robin, best of 1 round season, moving into a double round robin, best of 1 round season, which did mean that we got some tiebreakers at the end. It's very dramatic. It's kind of nice in that way. But kind of it does mean that there are less regular season games, therefore potentially less practice. There's still best of 1 in all the same ways. So yeah, what do you guys reckon about the triple to double best round?
At first, I don't like less games. Full stop.
Yeah, yeah.
The difference between 7 weeks and 11 weeks is huge, and I don't think that benefits anybody involved outside of Riot when it comes to renting the area.
It might be a
right?
logistics schedule thing.
We have to keep. I hate that I have to keep using this. Riot is the biggest video game company in the world. And they have Tencent money, they have Riot money. Basically, this, even if they see this as a losing endeavor, it's a marketing budget. I can't accept it. I can't.
Yeah.
That's not a good excuse, if there is that excuse.
It's really interesting you use those words, actually. Sorry, just cutting in, because you say it's like a marketing budget, and I know that at the start of 2013 when the LCS came out,
Broadcast is
esports really
a
started
marketing
kicking off.
thing.
Exactly, yeah, and in a large part, esports is an advertisement for your game.
Yes,
you know, it isn't
100%.
necessarily the product that you're selling; it's kind of the advertising for the actual product. What's been really interesting from the LEC, and I think there's actually something coming in. So actually, I think that Monty's got a new podcast coming out with Quickshot actually talking about the
Another.
LEC as well. Another one, but
Yeah.
this is more about esports as a whole rather than the games, more
Yeah.
focused on the
Quick
industry.
shot as an additional host with guests is a
Exactly.
huge
And-
one as well. I think that's
yeah,
going to be
exactly.
very interesting
And
to
the
watch.
thing about the LEC is that basically they're saying, look, it's not just advertising anymore. It's you have to treat it like a business itself.
Yep.
And like if you're treating the LGL like this and really ringing us around and not having a regular weekday where your games are being played, it's still best of ones. Going from best of triple to double round robin, I don't think that's the biggest thing in the world. It's less games, but it's still like best of ones for me. It means you potentially have tiebreakers, and it's still really condensed. So
Yeah. So here's where it was for the 2019 summer as well. So it was the Saturday the 15th of June to Sunday the 18th of August. So that's already over 2 months. And, you know, that's a lot of room to do 11 weeks. And it was less games in a day as well.
Yeah, and I mean also back in 2019, it's the exact same split. 19th of January and all the way through the 22nd of March. Again, huge over 2 month split.
So yeah, I guess they're doing this thing saying, "Oh man, it's just less games, so we need less time." And yeah, that's fine, but like you're condensing it so much.
Who does that benefit? It doesn't benefit the viewers because they don't get to see, they see less games, right? It doesn't benefit the teams because
it benefits the team that has the right read on that week. If you see what I mean. So
Sure.
if you come into week 1 with a great read on the meta, you can kind of pounce on the first 1, 2, 3 weeks that are in such a short time scale much easier than a team that needs to improve a lot.
I mean,
So a team that comes in has actually got a lot of improvements to make. They're going to get punished super hard for that.
but would any team really want that? Because in the grand scale of things,
It's
you could be the
pointless,
team
actually.
that is just gonna could be DFM, right? We could have DFM unstoppable in the grand scale of things in the LJL, completely read the meta wrong, basically have less weeks to figure it out, and then they fall into the mid-tier standings and potentially don't miss playoffs. But
We saw them lose playoffs round 1 or the round 2.
yeah, but imagine if that was lower down. Yeah, that would have been
Yeah.
game over.
Potentially.
Yeah, so I think regular season, I mean, there are still question marks for me, particularly in terms of, I don't mind double round robin, regardless of the best 1, best of 3 thing. It's fine, and tiebreakers are fun. I don't mind that from a dramatic standpoint. I don't care about the triple round robin going to double. I care about the schedule. It's very condensed. I think it's difficult on the players having short turnaround. I don't think it's necessarily good for their well-being that they're playing that many games in a short space of time as well.
It's not good for viewers. Like,
Can
it's
I-
just super awkward to know when things are happening.
So I
Can
think
I
that's
just
pretty much my thoughts on the
Pick
regular season.
Sorry, Lexi, go on.
Initialize's brain more. Yeah, no, I want to know what else you've got written down on your piece of paper.
So yeah, so that was specifically what I was saying was like that compressed time schedule was big. I was pointing out weeks 1 to 3 were, you know, within a week. Week 6 and 7, the last 2 weeks of your split are a day after each other. And we knew when we came into week 6 and 7, there was, I believe, a 5-way tie for 4th.
We half
And
killed
everything-
ourselves to go through all of that.
Yeah.
No one was actually placed lower than 4th because the bottom 5 teams were tied for 4th.
And that is coming into 2 consecutive days of play. Does that make for an amazingly dramatic weekend? Hell yes, it does. Does it make it the most competitively rigorous? Let's have that.
Yeah.
It's
It's
difficult.
4 games for each team within just over 24 hours.
And I don't want to rehash this point too much because we had this one conversation in the last podcast, but you know, there is also the major issue with the huge playoff break that happened between round 2 and round 3, halfway through the playoffs. And we did have a discussion that how much COVID affected it. Looking at the original schedule, not much. It got pushed back a week. Went from 4 weeks to 5. That's not fantastic from a competitive point of view either. We've had that conversation already.
I do think that's a very good problem. I mean, obviously, I have already been on the podcast and on our casts as well. I think I even mentioned this. I definitely would like to see the LGL switch to an alternative similar to VCS or LCK, where these are regions. One is our sister or older sister region is how I see it more. They're our older sister, kind of taking us through the ropes and really helping us in a lot of things. The VCS, how they do their casts and also just how their schedule works, it's very, very polite to almost everybody. It's never at crazy hours for really anywhere in the world outside
It
of
doesn't change massively, yeah.
yeah, outside of unless you're in Hawaii, it's basically very civil time for everybody. It's not shitloads of games, so the casts don't have to be super long, but it's best of 3, 2 best of 3s, but it's not
So
every
Yeah, it's double round robin, but best of 3, not best of 1.
But because they have less teams than LCK, it's not unreasonable to cover everything because they have the same amount of teams as us over in the LJL. So basically, when it comes to actually producing everything, I mean, I would like to see double round robin, best of 3s, personally.
Yeah, and I think that players in the past have definitely said, look, best of 3 is just so much more practice than best of 1s in a regular season. And if you look at like particularly, I think remembering back to like I think it was season 5. So when Cloud9 did that huge playoff run into Gauntlet bracket, they played more games in the postseason than they did in the regular season.
Yeah.
And potentially that's something which can, that's crazy, right?
Shouldn't
You look
happen.
let's look at
Unless you're doing a Cinderella run, then it's
yeah, and let's
I mean, it was a cool story. Don't get me wrong. It was
let's look at,
super
for
cool.
instance, yeah, it was. And let's look, for instance, CGA. So they had 2 5-game series in the postseason. So that's 10 games that they played in the postseason. That's almost matching their regular season. And if you have best of 3s, it does solve that issue, and it does mean that you're right. Best of 1 upsets matter less to actually the teams that do progress. They matter to a certain extent, but they don't, one stupid moment in a game or a stupid pick in Champions League doesn't end up sealing your fate. And I think that best of 3 is much better for competitive formats. I get that. So yeah, no, I agree. I think I would support a best of 3, but it has to come with a schedule as well.
Yeah.
They both have to come with each other.
And when we were talking about how Quick Shot Monty talking about how potentially we need to start viewing these broadcasters products in their own right, as businesses in their own right. And there was a discussion in NA when they did best of 3s about how their viewership numbers tanked, and that was difficult for them. And that was partly because they didn't schedule it through the week. They still tried to have it all on one day and split the streams up, and it got a little bit, they tried to do like the best of both worlds and end up with half a cat, if you know what I mean. You want all of a cat or none of a cat, not half of one.
The thing is, we already know it's proven to work. We already know it works for bootleg casts like ourselves over at the VCS. We already know that they were getting great viewership numbers, especially towards the end. Similar to ourselves, but they were on a bigger extent because they've been around for a bit longer, so it makes sense. As well as
really well. We're proud of them.
As well as also just like LCK viewership is only going up.
Yeah,
so you can't use the whole best of 3 thing. It's just it comes down to what Initia1ise was saying, and it was just a logistics problem where they can't manage themselves. Fucking it blows my mind as someone that went to university for business and marketing, and I'm just watching this happen in the scene that I love, and I'm just like, someone needs to let me slap some fucking board members because Christ. It's not hard to do this, or maybe it is, and I just don't understand the logistic problem back end. But then I would love to know that because I think
communication either way, right?
Yeah, it's definitely not a hard thing to solve.
The thing for me is obviously the worst case scenario is okay. We've got 2 best of 3s to date. None of them involve DFM. Oh man, our viewership's going to tank. But I know that, the viewership that the Japanese viewership for the other teams is also really high. You've got a lot of foreign, a lot of foreign interest looking basically only at DFM. But that's not really the case within the Japanese viewers. We've seen some huge voter turnouts for the
Access, Sengoku are pulling.
Sengoku, Rascal Jester,
exactly.
CJ, basically everyone, right? And so for me, it's the fans are definitely there for the other teams as well. And maybe it would affect our broadcast rights. I know that, on a certain day when we're broadcasting, 4-8 games and if DFM's playing it, we will get more viewers on our stream when we do that. But but
we don't have a marketing budget at the end of the fucking
We don't have a marketing budget right now.
If I had a marketing budget, we would be 10 times bigger. But guess what? We're doing this off our own back, so what can we expect? And that's just it. I want to just kind of go back over to Initia1ise for any other thoughts that he's got in regards to specifically this part of the topic.
So there's probably 2 things that are probably worth thinking about here. So one, if you're going to do best of 3, you need to schedule it appropriately for best of 3s throughout the week. Don't do it on a single day. It doesn't work very well.
Agree.
Second thing is actually, you're talking about the viewership numbers. There was a great post on Reddit that someone had pulled all the viewership for the various regions, and Japan had gone up something like, I think we're up 75% viewers from 2018 overall.
And that's not
a kind of massive group. So 45% from last year,
that's not
75%
including anything we did.
No, exactly. So there is serious gains going on in the right places.
Yeah. The
600 odd people increase.
Yeah, the 600 odd people that we also stole from the official stream. That's just basically, in their eyes, that's 1K. That's 1K viewers that just disappeared from their official stream, and yet they're going up, which just means there's interest.
Yeah, it's small fry in some scale of things, but it's still something, and it's really good for us, of course. But
of course, yeah. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, I do agree with you. Schedule needs to be a big thing. I don't know why the schedule. This seems to be a very sudden thing. As we do have to remember that, as Initialize and myself said, their last two spring and summer split didn't have that problem. So why was this coming in? Maybe it was due to what Initialize was hinting at and saying that obviously we've got less games. We can condense it into 1 month or so, save money, blah, blah, blah. But that clearly didn't work from our opinion, and also just didn't help a lot of the teams as
It's an odd one, and it doesn't mirror anything else across the world.
It
either.
was
It's
tough
not
on
like
the
they're taking precedent. Yeah, they're not taking precedence for anything. And if a team has like 1 or 2 bad days and they happen to fall on the Super Week, like it just wrecks your season. So it's not good for competitive stuff either.
It also doesn't help teams recover problems in the split.
Yeah, if you have a bad day on a playoff day or whatever, or no, on a regular season day, it actually means quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, just when you have 2 weeks or split 2 weeks, so even though they're not a week apart, they're like 4 days apart. If you just have something going wrong and you need to adjust, it's going to take about a week or 2 to sometimes fix that. We've seen that in NA and and EU and everything, where it's like, oh, this team's not playing so good, but guess what, Kaboom Esports were able to run it back and actually make it in. Like,
that was a huge story, by the way, guys.
Wouldn't happen if they didn't have time to prepare. Which is
I've got
what a lot of our teams currently don't have that for during their spring split. They wouldn't get that.
Sorry to run over you there. I've got the exact stats up for the LJL viewership. So the comparison to 2019, up 44.44%. Comparison to spring 2018, up 75.27%. That's
huge. We're up 40.
Like, that's just huge.
This is 44% on a year-on-year average. That is absurd. Yeah. That kind of growth still from 70 to 44. During these that's absurd, dude.
I'm sure it helps that we've had people
not like 75%, but remember, like the year-on-year thing means that 44% is still larger net viewers.
Oh yeah,
it's more than it seems.
That's why I'm freaking out.
It's very impressive.
We
haven't talked about the playoff format yet either, actually. Yeah, that's something that we need to talk about.
We did a little bit the last time as well, I know, but like.
No, I have to say, if we're going to talk about some of the crap about scheduling stuff, the playoff format was good. It was good.
I like the upper bracket. It's just the schedule between round 2, round 3.
I enjoyed seeing more teams in playoffs. We had 6 out of our 8 teams play, and it's really good to see all of them.
Would you guys mind if I drive this conversation?
Yeah, go, man. What you got?
So, when we originally came to start doing the LJL Officially Unofficial, when we did our tier lists and everything else, we worked on the idea that there was only going to be 3 teams going into playoffs. I'm saying this now because this is going to be something we reference a lot in our hot takes and everything else. And this is also something that in our tier lists, we basically reference our top 3, middle 3, bottom 2. And how our expectations went. It actually doesn't matter in that sense because you have top 2, middle 4, bottom 2, which is very different for our playoffs and everything, because I don't believe playoffs had been announced how they were doing it when we first started recording. We did learn partway through the split, I believe, that playoffs were going to be different, but we weren't quite sure how everything was going to work out, and it's far better from us to not speculate than to just wait, I think.
Sure.
Am I right with that, Nymaera?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember when I think we found out relatively early, but it wasn't, it didn't really change how we power rank the teams and stuff. It's like, well, whatever. It's just, this is how like we look at these teams and we think about these kind of brackets, our assumed kind of power ranking, stuff like that. But obviously, and the plus being different was something that I think when we first decided to start casting and we didn't know about it, we learned about it soon after. I can't remember if we knew episode 1 though.
I don't recall we did. I mean, just for any of our listeners that isn't hugely aware, LJL used to just do a top 3 playoffs where the first place seed automatically qualified for the finals, and then obviously 3rd and 2nd just played off. Now we get the top 6, which basically means it's a lot more into offer, which is why more games are required. I mean, I do want to speculate, and this is just me going pure speculation mode, if they're interested in having 6 teams in playoffs. Commonly, you would assume to see more teams in a league to make it, because that's a very small percentage amount of teams will only miss. Only 15% of teams in the league are going to miss.
Okay.
So I'm interested.
The LCS regions used to have that. The LCS regions used to have that, I think.
So
They used to have 6, and they had like the quarterfinals.
they
semis, and
expanded.
finals.
Yeah. So I think partly it's basically how much talent does the infrastructure like, and there is room for the LJL to expand at some point. But I think for now there is this kind of element of like, do we have enough talent to have teams? And I don't think the LJL is confident enough to put that in. So that would be part of the reason. So like that's an issue.
It's also like it's semi.
On the other hand, though,
franchise. Do you remember?
Yeah, we're not franchised.
Yeah. So I mean, so they could so they could expand that. On top of that, there is something to be said for if you know you cannot reach top 3, and sometimes top 3 teams do just run away with the league, and it's just impossible to meet them. Teams just have less to play for. It's less competitive drive, and actually having 6 teams in playoffs is just better competitive space for players to be in because they've got more to live for. Playoffs is a dream that's achievable rather than way out of reach for like DFM and whoever the current Rampage, the current USG are, right?
I don't disagree. I think it's just an interesting fact that we've changed to this. Sure. Potentially moving forward, I like to do these really early speculative calls. I wouldn't be surprised if we go to 10 teams potentially in 2021.
Maybe it'll happen that way.
Something like
maybe it will. Yeah. Maybe that'd be crazy.
I don't think we'll go straight to like 12 teams or anything crazy. I think it'll be 10.
No,
it'll be like 10 teams. It would only be 2 at most.
And that's what LCS LEC did when they expanded in season 5. They had the expansion tournaments and they went from 8 to 10.
And I mean, I also just don't know how many esports organizations there are in Japan personally.
Yeah, but just remember that. So basically, like the LJL right now doesn't have promotion relegation. So LJL doesn't have promotion relegation right now. So it's not a Riot franchise, but it is a franchise as a thing. No. So there's no promotion relegation.
No,
it's not a Riot franchise.
You just buy your spot in, and that's it. It's just it's weird.
It's kind of like it's the halfway house between like LEC and free for all. So.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
It's kind of a weird halfway house. But yeah, no, I think overall, besides the schedule for the playoffs thing, I think the playoffs format, I enjoyed seeing more teams in there. I wonder if that's just because the team's more even, the split, though. If it was as top-heavy as it has been in previous years and we get a load of quite low-quality best-of-5s, it might have been quite a bad format. But I think I enjoyed the playoffs matches. I think the matches were very good, and we wouldn't have had that without this format. So I think in terms of how much we slammed them for the regular season, the playoffs was pretty good. Besides the break, that was.
But that break was egregious.
That was bad. I mean, the format itself wasn't a problem. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think the only other thing I'll add on that is I think the top 2 getting a kind of lifeline, a get out of jail free card in that Juggernaut match, I think is a nice touch. It gives kind of because if you're gonna have so many teams in playoffs anyway, where you are actually taking 3/4 of the teams into playoffs, like actually, having more reason to strive for the top of the table is important still, because otherwise people say, I'm in playoffs, I don't have to care so much anymore. And that's not great for competitive drive either. True. So having like a good reason to end up in the top 2, namely, hey, you actually get to skip around, you get an extra life. I think that can be quite good.
I agree. I also do prefer this kind of system, this kind of tournament structure, very similar to like FGCs and just standard kind of esports tournaments. Yeah. Especially you see this in Counter-Strike and other esports where you have a special tournament, the people that did well during their play-ins and everything else are in their teams, scrims and Swiss and everything, get the pass. But guess what? If they lose, they go down to losers bracket, which is round 3. I prefer this so much more over to than what LCK currently does, where it's
I think that's a big discussion right now in the LCK format too.
Yeah, I currently think we actually have one of the better ones. It's not flawless by any sense of the imagination, but I think it's a really good place for them to build, and I think we've definitely hit the nail on the head that, frankly, a lot of our problems with the LJL when it came to the tournament structure and everything wasn't actually the tournaments itself. We actually think it was rather well done. It just came down to the time, because there was basically about 2 months of dead time.
That's probably the best way to sum up our thoughts. So well said, Lexi. I think that basically sums up.
Which is...
That being said, I do like the point you made about, what happens with like when you've only got 2 teams not making playoffs. That's relevant too. I know that's something we can entertain. And when in a team of eight teams, when 6 of them make playoffs, maybe a point to entertain. So that's not something I'd thought about. So yeah, I agree with that.
That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. I do sometimes have a 5-head moment. I just go from a 3-head to a 5-head.
Only sometimes.
It does go. When the light hits my forehead right and it reflects it a little bit. It gets it going perfectly fine. I do want to.
That's just the ring light, buddy.
Oh, I do want to hit it one last time back over to Initialize.
Yes.
Just because I do know you've put a little bit of work, or a fair bit of work into this. So, have you got any other closing points? Potentially anything you've overlooked or forgot to mention very quickly?
I think that covered most of it. Like, I think anything more is going into a lot of nitty-gritty nuance, and what, like, potentially talking about, like, what other formats would be competitive, and there's maybe one or two options, but I think this is a good starting place, and I like it. The option would be adding a couple more teams in to add more people who don't make it in, but that feels like it needs to be competitive.
Yeah. There were the Scouting Grounds tournaments, remember, back in the day.
I mean, we were still seeing that the LJL going into this. I mean, this is how we got, I believe, this is how Pooh and Grendel.
That's how Pooh came in, yeah.
Grendel as well, I felt.
Possibly.
Maybe a while ago Grendel came in through that. No, actually, no, I remember Grendel was a player, then he went off. He has played for Challenger teams, and then he somehow earned his way on being a coach. Yeah. Whatever. But like, so we know Pooh went through a similar kind of Challenger thing. There's at least some form of competitive tournament pedigree in the LJL. So I mean, especially in the lower levels, which will be interesting. Obviously, though, getting rank 1 in LJL or in the Japanese server doesn't seem to have a lot of prestige, because a lot of the best players that we have been coming across, they all play in Korea. So how much do we actually have to put on good in Japan server, whereas everybody pays with 20 ping over in Korea? I mean, that asks questions. But let's go on to our next main topic, which is where we're going to start flaming ourselves, and we're gonna have a lot more fun with this. Instead of looking at the region and the LJL itself, we're gonna look at ourselves and say what we said about the teams and everything. So first off, gentlemen, I'm going to run through my power rankings, and then I will ask you each to do your own, and then let's talk about similarities, differences, and then we'll go into kind of some of the fun stuff that Nymaera is going to bring to us through our lovely ears. In eighth place, I've got Axis. In 7th place, I have Burning Core. In 6th place, I have Rascal Jester. In 5th place, I have V3. In 4th place, I have CGA. In 3rd place, I have Sengoku Gaming. In 2nd place, I have DFM. And all the way in 1st place, winning the LJL 2020 Spring Split. We're on their golden run for Honey. It's going to be the Hawks. Nymaera, let you take it away and do your rundown.
So not talking about any of those things at all. In 8th place, I have Axis. In 7th place, I have Burning Core. In 6th place, I have V3. 5th place, I have Rascal Jester. 4th place, I have CGA. 3rd place, I have the Hawks. And in 2nd place, I have DFM. And 1st place, I have Sengoku.
Okay. Initialize, your turn.
I had Axis in 8th place, like the two of you. I also had Burning Core in 7th place. Then I had Rascal Jesters. Then I had CGA. Then I had V3. Then I too had the Hawks in 3rd. I had Sengoku Gaming in 2nd, and Detonation focused me as the Spring Split champions.
Jesus Christ, we messed up bad on that one.
Okay, so everyone's probably thinking we've got two of the... Well, okay, so I clearly went all in on a team, but my lovely co-hosts here on this podcast also agreed with me, and then Initialize decided in his infinite wisdom, and this will be in the show notes, by the way, in his infinite wisdom to say, you know what, Lexi, your first place prediction wasn't that crazy at the beginning. A certain player and coach of the region, you might have heard of him, he's called Maple Street. It's, I don't know, maybe...
No, I never heard of him before. Not famous at all.
Yeah. Not famous. He just
not related to anybody else.
He follows the account on Twitter. I don't know. He put the Hawks also in first place.
He did.
So
I mean, I will caveat him in fairness in that he also said that would become the end of the season. So
sure,
he's got a lot of rolling of dice to hope that that's gonna work out. So okay, let's first talk about Access, as we can go far more into this, and yeah, this is gonna be an awkward one. We all put them at, well, I think Nymaera might be able to put this better with a soundbite of me saying something.
Yeah, so we have a video sharing thing, which will hopefully replay some clips from episode 1, which you'll hear. So our first one is this.
To do it, I feel bad because they've just announced their full roster, and I'm gonna put them at 8th. And it's gonna be Axis, sadly.
Yep, I agree.
Not much disagreement there.
Okay.
I mean,
And
so
yeah, it's on video, it's recorded.
Yep.
We put Axis in 8th.
And I mean, to be honest, we just kind of looked at their summer and spring split in the grand scale of things, and they had not performed. Some things had changed, but we weren't confident enough that that was gonna be the change. I mean,
Well,
for God's
yeah.
sake, like, what
Yeah,
else
so,
could
I
we
mean-
expect?
Particularly my opinion, I have another Pellet Cat soundbite which I can play immediately if you want me to
Go
tag
on.
into
Yeah, do it. I know which one you're
Gold
going for.
Generated by junglers. And if you want to not finish last, you can't keep your stone dead last solo laners, right? And that's me saying some pretty hot takes there.
Ooh.
Yeah, so
Go
I
on.
basically just say if you're gonna finish last for a full year going 3-17 in both splits, what are you doing with your solo laners? And actually, Gadiadu had a really good
He
split.
had a really good split.
really good split for me.
You know who he used to be on before Axis?
Oh, I know that. I already looked
And
at that.
Unyan also had some really good moments. Maybe some arguments to be made there, but Gadiadu on the whole had a really good split.
Really good split.
I'd really take a bit of a slap for that one because he was
Oh,
arguably
man.
their best member, I think.
It's crazy that we rated Galliardo so low because he's ex-USG who basically went to back-to-back finals, I think, or
Yeah.
something like back-to-back playoffs in the 2018 spring and summer split. And then we're just like hard flaming him because he's like, nah, mate, you're washed up. And it's like, maybe it was the other members of the team and it wasn't him and Unyan who were actually performing pretty good.
Sure.
Granted, Unyan at that point was unproven talent. He was a challenger player going into this, and this was his questionable. But I mean, clearly they both performed far above our own
Yeah, to an extent.
expectations.
Sure. And I had some reasoning for that as well. But I think Axis, I mean, like, the thing is, like, going into this split, Axis was so hard to place above 8th because they'd had such a crap 2019, right? And, you know, like, there had to be some kind of change, and obviously they did it, but, like, it wasn't for the first start of the week. They went 0-4, right? In the first, and then they picked up their first win in week 1. I think they went 0-5
Week
before they
3,
picked
you
up their first win.
Yeah, they went 0-4, I think. It was
I think they
0-4.
went. I think they went 0-5 because they picked
Was
up
it
a
0-5?
win in
My
the sec-
days.
I think they won their second game of week 3, if I'm remembering rightly.
Was
But
it
like,
second?
it was a
I'll have
long
a look
time
now.
for them to turn around and get away.
But it wasn't the longest losing streak in the LJL, so does it matter in the grand scale
No,
of things?
it actually wasn't. No, it wasn't. It's just the most visible one because there's a 0 in the win column for so long, right? So maybe that does tilt some opinions. But like, no, Axis, we completely misjudged them.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to?
It was the first win of week 3, Al.
Gotcha.
Just
gotcha.
to come out when he was first
Okay,
for us,
cool.
just to say.
I mean, we've got a really nice.
And I think actually, go on, man.
Yeah, we've got a really nice closing thought, which is probably actually going to link into Initia1ise's thought with the next with the next clip. Once Nymaera can get that up,
Sure.
which kind of really explains what I imagine Initia1ise is planning on going with his point.
Is this the lanes which play to the level which they did last year? I can't see how changing jungle and your bot lane is going to help because you can't teamfight effectively when you don't have at least a stable map state. So that was one thing which I had next thing on the timestamp. But yeah, that's me again, just kind of taking a bit of a crap on my own intellect, really, and just going like, okay, well, whatever. Actually, for me, I think if you go and watch a couple of the games where Axis were really failing, it was about stable map states because, like, you had mid lane doing alright, and then the other lane's not really managed. They had some really good ideas. I love their drafts, but
I think this was part of the brilliance of watching Axis this split, wasn't it? That we had no hope for them. No one had hope for them. There was bad Twitter votes everywhere. Everyone thought they were going to be kind of the stone dead last, perennial wooden spoon, a kind of falling into Italy in the Six Nations kind of vibes. Like that kind of, you kind of know where they're going to be. They might try and play a little bit, but they're going to struggle. And the additions of Corporal who'd come in from, ex-Direwolf player. We had Hoglet, who's a relative unknown, who'd been playing a little bit over in LATAM, done pretty well over there, played some Challenger Series. Like, we didn't know what to expect from this. We didn't think it would be enough. And then they come out with these ridiculous strats, like things like some brilliant. We're going to run Tristana Karthus and press our R buttons at the same time and try and blow people up. We're going to run Jinx Lysandra. I'm going to have Corporal on a Thresh making these really clutch outplays. And
the
they just came in with plans.
Yeah, the creativity was never in doubt, and that's something which I liked right from week one, where they were the only team playing Ryze actually and trying to do a 1-3-1. Didn't end up working, but you could kind of see the pieces in motion just never quite worked.
Yeah, and you hit this point where actually Gariaru was a stable point on the map, where Hoglet was getting things done early, where Corporal was making good plays on the likes of his Thresh, where we had a bit of a stable map and suddenly a plan involved, and we kind of were made to eat our words because Axis turned out to be a pretty good team and well and truly playoff.
I mean, in the grand scale of things, when you say eat our words, we don't have to necessarily eat them too much because they were a team that we did ask during the podcast to perform. You can't, if you're gonna
set up the caveat.
Yeah, like I mean, at the end of the day, prove us wrong because currently what you've got, new changes are good, but we don't know how much Corporal was going to do for the we didn't even know who was going to be their support laner until things came out and then
drama in there.
Corporal was made their starting support, which to be honest I think has paid in spades for the team in the grand scale of things, from play to also just communication. It just seems like the team works. Also, Hoglet has been a huge improvement in the jungle. Really does just trust Gariaru to just kind of in games, and Eunyan as well to that extent. And Hyde has been really important. It's been surprise, and this is a team where potentially moving forward could offer really great things, right?
Yeah, because I think that so if you look particularly, if you go back a couple of episodes to our pre-playoffs one where we do our power ranking stuff, I was really high on Gadiado and Hoglet, and we were all very complimentary of Corporal as well. We had some questions about Hyde and his positioning, but he wasn't the worst thing ever. We had a lot of praise for a team which at the start of the split you wouldn't have heard us said. So congrats Axis, you did well.
They had a Cinderella story, and we said they might need a bit of magic to pull themselves out at last. The fairy godmother did come along, and they did get that courage to go and find their way up to playoffs. But we asked for a bit of a miracle, and they sure as hell provided with a lot of hard work and some clever play.
I want to ask both of you guys actually, how did you feel about Axis doing this split? Legit, because obviously we talked about it from our predictions wrong, but how did you feel about Axis going through this split?
What, because of how they on my week
how they did, just everything about Axis. How did you feel about it?
To be honest, I think I needed somebody to do something like this in the grand when looking at the LJL. I mean, there were teams that were basically doing the opposite, and no one really started doing. Everyone started losing a bunch. No one started winning a lot, except for really DFM and Sengoku, who are teams we already rated really highly. I really wanted to see a team do this. I would have been happy with basically anybody really doing this in my eyes. And I think it was really nice that it happened to be Axis, because they were that 2-split week, 2 splits in a row, can't win a game, basically 6 wins across 2 splits is just that doesn't even get you middle of the pack sometimes. It's nice. I would have been happy if Burning Core had done this run. I would have been just as happy, I think, if Rascal Jesters had actually not come 7th. If maybe they had pushed themselves up to 3rd, maybe even 2nd, and take off Sengoku. I would have loved to have seen that. I think there were options. I think I'm just happy that Axis finally had their day in the sun, though, because it's been a long time.
Someone did it, and it was Axis, so it's even better.
So, I kind of want to add in on that, because actually, it never feels good to write a team off, right? You never want to come into a split and said, they're done from the beginning. And we kind of had that fear that Axis were just going to be doing a repeat of 2018. It would just feel like it's a bit of a disappointment from a competitive point of view, and it just feels bad, to have a team that's just not having a good time. And it's so much sweeter than to actually be proved wrong, where you said actually we don't think this team's got a chance, and they prove you wrong. And that feels a lot better than, say, a team that you have a lot of hopes for just falling apart and looking a bit miserable. This that feels really cool, watching a team that pull it together and kind of prove you wrong in a good way, right? Being proved wrong in a good way and actually compete is nice. Especially because it's not like we did, especially because we think they could potentially.
Pepe hands, yeah. We'll get onto that. We'll get onto that a bit later. Joint all in 7th place, and we actually called it correctly. Good job, all of us. Without any moving or shuffling around the standings. Burning Core, 7th place. I think the Burning Core quote that I say in a moment will actually probably sum this up perfectly.
I agree.
I agree.
So, being middle of the pack last split and the split before does not by default make you another middle of the pack team. This actually downgrades you. You are now going to go down in our tier list, and in that.
And I think that sums it up perfectly. If
Yep.
I'm honest, I think you put it into words which, very blunt, but it makes the point very well.
It was.
They didn't change the roster.
It was a really sad thing that Burning Core were a roster that were already not doing much of anything exciting, and then you look at this, and I mean, I don't know if we actually say this quite later, and if we do, we can play it anyway. But it's along the lines of, I think it's either one of you two says, I don't say this, but basically the region in general has gotten significantly stronger, and this is if everybody else is upgrading, even Axis were upgrading, or at least trying something out.
Yeah, trying.
Whereas Burning Core were the only team doing that, and they weren't DFM. But DFM were the only other team to not do that, but DFM are different to Burning Core. DFM can do whatever the fuck they like and probably still do okay, whereas Burning Core were already on shaky ground. They were lucky to make 6th, 5th, I think was their common placing out of 8 teams, which, cool, buddy. Yeah. You're staying stable, and now you're not. You're the bottom of the pack.
I think last year they finished 4th twice. I think that's what they did.
Yeah.
So basically we called them like, okay, all right, you're definitely in that halfway mark between the teams here, either 4th or 5th, something like that.
Yeah, something like
and
that.
In fairness, like, credit to them, they did bounce around the standings a fair bit, and Ray Farkey was very impressive in the top lane, but like,
True.
it felt like it was Ray Farkey or bust so many games.
Yeah.
Yeah, they deserved seventh, unfortunately. They did.
We had that conversation, didn't we? Where we actually said, I remember having a conversation a little when we were talking about Burning Core back way on that episode, we said, like, look, this is a team that's managed to hit middle of the standings, and there's some talent here, but they have got issues, and not upgrading what everybody else has is a problem. And you kind of saw it, because we knew what Ray Farkey could do, and we saw what Once could do with an early lead. We also could see him throw it, and we saw glimmers of wanting to reach for the stars, and they just didn't quite make it.
I mean, this will be part of our news part, so we're going to be talking a bit more about Burning Core and changes in the future. But I mean, this is definitely a team where stuff needs to change in the roster. Potentially not too much going into summer, because that's a terrible time to do huge roster changes, but moving into 2021 spring, or just into the next season after summer, depending on how things do continue moving forward. Things will need to change because there's current problems for the rest of this team, and this is why they finished 7th. They decided to take a split off, and we called it, and it's great to say we called it, because they didn't do what we said they needed to do.
And it's also really good from our point of view, but basically, I mean, what you're saying is like, well, downgrading, not changing anything is the same as downgrading. The other side of that means that basically the entire league has gotten better. So for us as casters, for you guys as spectators, and for LJL and the international stage, it's good. It means that LJL is probably, I mean, if you say basically, if nothing had changed, Burning Core would have come 4th. They've dropped significantly. That means LJL is better. It's good for us internationally.
Well, it also means that we're good at analyzing and analytics, so it means
Axis wasn't a free win. Like, you can't guarantee that anymore. Like, they were taking games off these guys.
I think that's actually a really good quote that I think if Nymaera set the next one up, actually falls into it.
Into that top 3 playoff bracket, but they never kind of fell below that.
Yeah.
But this split, I think with the amount of new blood we've got coming into the LJL, I don't see them keeping up with the rest of the teams in this region.
Yeah.
Is there anything more you want to play from that?
No. That was basically you just calling it perfectly, sir.
I didn't put that one down myself, so I have no idea what's actually going to be said.
No. I tried to go through all of them quickly, but that's because I mean that was your brother doing that one for you, sir. So
I got you, buddy.
I think that just really echoes the fact that it wasn't just one of us. We all put them at 7th place. We all kind of echoed the same fact, and our tier lists were done independent of each other, and then we came together and decided to talk about it. So that's bad where 3 independent brains, yes, while we do talk about the region, we do also like to do things individually, so we're not completely in an echo chamber in regards to all of our thoughts.
Yeah.
Now, this does take us into an interesting spot, gentlemen, as I think the next soundbite, if Nymaera is ready for us, will kind of explain a lot of where we're going with this for our next 3 teams. I have been umming and ahhing over this for the last few minutes while you've both been talking and I've been interjecting. I've kind of moved them around. This is how kind of fluid. I'm gonna make the stand, and I think I've got it this order, and I'm gonna do it, and I totally could think I'm wrong, and that this group that I'm putting as 6th could be 4th. This is how much it's close it is.
That's pretty much it. Just saying that 4th to 6th, absolute shit show.
Yeah. And this is why we also
It was pretty much.
We have the same 3 teams in this kind of area of CGA, V3, and Rascal Jester. Me and Initialize both put Rascal Jester as our 6th place team, but and Nymaera put them as 5th, and then we all swap around in 5th and 4th, and basically we try to get every combination between the 3 of us independently, which I think is actually pretty impressive in the grand scale of things, with only 1 tie. So pat on the back for that at least. I mean, I think I just want to go into the first quote that really kind of hits where we're at with this and Rascal Jester. I'm putting Rascal Jesters at 6th.
Me too.
Okay, so I put them 5th.
Okay.
Okay, so do you want to run any more of that, or is that
Yeah, no, that's what I wanted. So me and Initialize both put them at 6th place because this was a team where we both kind of looked at them and thought, well, I mean, they're good, but they could also just have the basic training wheel. The wheels could come off the bike at any point, and it could be an absolute shit show. At that same time, they could suddenly those wheels could turn into rocket launchers and go to the moon and have a perfect game in week 7 versus Sengoku. So, frankly, I think Rascal Jesters actually
a weird team.
Kind of played up to all of our expectations. I'm going to pass over to Initialize for this first part, and then I'll go to Nymaera.
Yeah, I mean, that was the problem with Jesters. I mean, if you want to... I mean, I've got a super hot take if you want to throw that out, Al. Because this probably describes my thoughts on the Jesters. Yeah, because that just throws my points on the Jesters straight out. The time for the synergy to come together. So at the minute for the start of the split, I have Rascal Jester down in 6th. I expect them to start making upsets come mid of the season. I expect them to stop being upsets by the end of the season. Yes, I've got them down in 6th.
Yeah,
that is for. And that'll kind of do, because that was my thinking is I call a little bit later that I actually expected the Jesters to potentially compete for 4th in summer, and I kind of stand by that because the Jesters, when they're on, are kind of brilliant. They have drafts out of the weird, they're weird drafts that kind of work. They've got brilliant bot lane in Art and Vivid that can do a lot of work. Hachimachi, when he's got a good read, does a lot of stuff. At the same time, they can just suddenly look like they have no clue what they're doing, and it's completely bizarre to read.
Do you want to see both sides of this? Regular season versus Burning Core. Both games. Really good to see both sides of what he's saying.
Yeah. That was what making this team so hard to score. Like, they could be 6th, they could be 4th, they could be anywhere in between, and they do have that ability to just take games off people, and it wouldn't be an upset. They could also drop games to people, and it wouldn't be an upset. And that's the kind of team they were, and I think I probably stick by it. I think that takes probably lasted quite well.
I think so, yeah. Well, obviously, the first round of playoffs, we saw them go 5 games versus CGA. It was really fun. They finished the season in 4th place, so the regular split. So they came into playoffs looking pretty hot. They had a fantastic series versus CGA. They lost, but they competed, so competing for 4th seems like you're pretty spot on.
Down to a last game that could have gone... There was 2 carries, Art and Arya, that were trying their very best.
I mean, if you use the playoff where they fell in there, that's 5th/6. We all got that one right. So, I mean, we're still looking pretty good in regards to that. I mean, I do have a rather controversial point when I am starting to roast Rascal Jester a little bit on my thoughts in regards to it and how their team work, really.
Have it queued up.
Go for it. Brilliantly together for the same reason as Sam, but I don't also expect them to potentially, like, if they bond, it's going to be great. But if they don't, they are probably just better on an individual level than, in my opinion, Axis and Burning Core. That's why I put them at 6th. But I also could see them, if they perform, they're going to perform brilliantly. If they don't, it's just going to be just people trying to work together, and it's almost going to be glorified solo queue.
And that's pretty much what I wanted to get to. Wrestle Jester, glorified solo queue.
Solo
And
queue.
you know
Oh,
what?
man.
That sounds actually very fitting for a team
Oh.
that picks some random ass shit and makes it somehow work.
Yeah, I mean, they're the team that upset CGA, remember, when Aria looked like they couldn't lose the game, but nah, Rascal Jester
Oh,
find out the
favoritism.
spots. Rascal Jester are the team that I think has had some of the jammiest wins in the
Oh,
LJL.
Shit,
sure.
Nautilus mids.
Sure,
But
they
they're
are
also the
ridiculous.
team that has lost spots where they shouldn't have lost. They have lost
Yeah.
games where they shouldn't have lost. They had a lead, and I think my idea of that they're two teams into one was a really nice way of kind of thinking of it. They were a team that could definitely do everything. I mean, you just have to think, like, somehow they perfect gamed Sengoku, who then went
Yeah.
on to beat DFM in playoffs in that first game. It's like, what the fuck are we doing? And then they lose to CGA. It's like, God, Rascal Jester really are the moneymakers, right? They could beat. And I think we've been calling this throughout all of it. Whenever we saw Rascal Jester and all of our podcasts, I think, especially during the regular split, we always said Rascal Jester are the team that could beat anybody, but they could lose to anybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they didn't quite manage to beat a DFM, but they came really close. I
They
think it was
did.
week. Was either week 2? I think it was week 2
I think it was
actually.
week
They
2.
came-
Yeah, was.
they
It
came
came
up against
close.
DFM, and they had a really interesting draft. We talked about it a load in previous podcasts. But you know, they were really trying out new stuff, and they were kind of the mad scientists. I think they are the team we'd give that moniker to. And like, I mean,
Oh,
in
yeah.
game 1 of playoffs against CJ, we saw like Ninja solo killing Arya, our mid lane MVP and stuff. They could just do it on a good day. On a good day, this team could do anything. They finished 5th, 6th, but come summer, really need to watch them.
If only because there is a wild card they love to draw, and everyone else just doesn't know what to make of them, and it's wonderful. Nautilus mid is still a thing, and it's played by Ninja.
I mean, are we really surprised?
No,
really.
not at all.
But then that takes us over to our next team in the agenda. Nymaera's 6th place team, my 5th place team, and Initialize's 4th place team. V3, at the beginning of this split, we kind of dubbed them the 1-on-1 team in every week. They then stopped having that moniker, and a god did rise from them. His name was Boogie, but that's not quite where we started with V3. Now, is it, Nymaera?
Okay.
Trust
Is it?
So
I've
my
got other
6th pla-
arguments, but they'll come later.
Yeah, so I think they will be better than a 6th place team, V3 for me. Actually.
Swapped around for me.
Yeah.
I've got
Mainly
Rascal
because
6th.
Okay, right, and it will go into a little bit after that. But yes, the soundbite is I thought V3 would be 6th, and I am sorry. I apologize. I shall go
Oh,
atone for my sins. in
learn
the
Jungle
past
Echo and
well.
understand the ways, the means, the paths of Boogie.
And yeah, there's another soundbite which we'll go into in a bit. But like, I had some reasoning which is somewhat relevant, but 6th was absolutely not where V3 was.
No, I mean, this was a team that we
No.
all underrated, I think would be fair.
Yeah, I mean, I had them up in 4th, so like I had some hope for them, partly for the wrong reasons, I think, which we might cover later. But I had a call on V3 being up in 4th and perhaps struggling to touch the top 3. But I had a lot of faith, particularly in Boogie and in Paz, and some of that proved true.
So, Nymaera, go on. I want to hear this soundbite because I love hearing. I chuckled to myself while I was walking along yesterday and listening to it. So, go on. V3 5th.
I just don't trust Ace in this current meta. I think that Ace is going to be a liability in team fights. I don't think he always puts out the damage that he could do. And that's pretty much it.
I think that's fair. I think the Zoe game, which we were very underwhelmed with, where he wasn't finding the picks or the damage, you actually just called several months before that game even happened.
No, so basically, the thing for me is that V3, when they started doing really well, it was on picks where actually Ace, regardless of how he performed, could just like perform the role within his team, and they did well.
Yeah.
Stuff like the Rumble mid, and he played that really well. And
Hell, the Nocturne, right? Press R.
Yeah, so when they came into the first round of playoffs and then against CGA as well, actually Ace did really well. And that's one of the reasons I was really high on them coming into the semifinals match. It was actually like, hey, so Ace in the last playoffs, he had some awkward moments. We didn't quite land all the damage he needed to, but he found some picks that were working for him. It just didn't come out again in the semifinals.
No. And I mean, what was so upsetting for us is because we actually thought maybe we're fully wrong about Ace. Maybe we
Yeah.
are. He just
Maybe he's found a champion pool.
he's doing okay against Ardia. If you can do okay against Ardia, we think you're gonna have a you're gonna have a fine time versus Syros in the grand scale of things. You should be able to at least farm equally. God, how wrong we were with that. God, how wrong we were with that.
Yeah, Ace really had it taken to him by Saros in the semifinals. It was pretty nasty. But yeah, no, I mean, like V3, we definitely underrated them. I don't think any of us could see how big Boogie would be for this team. And also, having a rookie AD carry and Archer come in and really just have a good split on the whole.
Yeah.
So we undervalue a lot of members.
Well, we really slept on Reyna as well. Like, that man was great. Second best sport in the league, probably.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Top three, yeah. Top three, yeah.
Definitely top three.
I mean, V3 was a team that in the original podcast we didn't cover hugely because we kind of put them as a 6th/5th/4th. Like, we weren't quite sure where we're going to put them. We weren't particularly high on them, but we weren't not on them. We thought they would be a presence. It'd be interesting. We did say things about Boogie, but in the actual podcast episode itself, we very much kind of slept on them a little bit.
Because, okay, and our reasoning for that was they reached the finals in the last split with a jungler who, by the way, so he's called Baby, renamed to River. He just won the PCS, by the way. So this guy he's a really
good player.
Really good. They lost Yutori Miyashi, star AD carry. They lost their support as well as
Vivid.
So they lost like 3 really good players for players that we just didn't know would succeed. So, we were down on them and we were wrong about that.
But I think that was also an educated guess of hedging your bets when you're losing potentially the best Japanese AD carry, or maybe the second best, depending on Utapon. Like one of the two. You're losing a proven jungler who has only gone on for bigger titles, right? In like huge titles in the grand scale of things, and then losing a support like Vivid. A proven support, yes. Okay, you're switching out for Reyna, which again, proven support.
Turned out pretty well.
Rather similar level. Yeah. It's very difficult to guess that. So I think we are hedging our bets, saying it might take a split to get used to it. They actually picked it up pretty quickly. So yeah, the other team though we haven't talked about in this pack of 3 is CGA. Now I put CGA at 4th place. Nymaera put CGA at 4th place, and Initia1ise put them at 5th place. So we were all still on CGA. CGA were our highest rated team out of the 3 between the 3 of us. So we're definitely we were all expecting positive things, I think, to come from CGA. Am I right when saying that, gentlemen?
They made us work for it. But yeah, no, so CGA were the 3rd place finishes from summer 2019. And yeah, we feel like it was going to be a bit awkward with a couple of the changes coming in, but we were overall thinking, hey, these guys are pretty good. They got a new AD carry, Gango. He's a Korean AD carry. Did pretty well.
I think let's hear the first soundbite for Initialize. Why he's put them in 5th place.
I did put them in 5th. Yeah. It's my 5th place.
Your 5th place. Who's your 5th place?
So my 5th place is currently Crest Gaming.
God damn it! You just destroyed it.
So you just put V3 up in 4th.
I have put V3.
Wow.
I have. There we go.
So Sam, you put him in 5th.
I did. And relative to the standings, and the way,
the floor is yours, sir.
The way another team kind of fell out of where we thought they would be, I think probably pushes them up. And I think there's a little later on where I talk about why I put them this way, because I kind of had in the podcast, it was a discussion for me at least about why I put V3 over CJ and why I put CJ to what they did, and I kind of had a lot of hope for Arya, then Luna, and Gango, but why I put V3 over CJ, and I kind of had a lot of hope for V3 was basically I thought.
Let's get the soundbite for that. I think if Nymaera's ready for us, go for it. Let's play that.
So it's specifically for a couple reasons. So I don't know if anybody's been following the LCS particularly too much at the minute, but there's been a bit of a discussion about why Dignitas have been doing so well in the early half of the split. They were undefeated until yesterday, I think, was as of recording anyway. And largely what that's been is the fact they have
Wait, did you just say LCS?
Let me skip through.
Does that mean TSM?
It's like this whenever
we got on a TSM for about
TSM lost to Dignitas.
We're trying to get him to watch Better League about Bay and Life, but he just gets really aggressive about attached to that.
What do you mean?
Anyway, so
First
but
challenge
specifically,
for
there
this
is this
season.
argument that I want to say might have been Jack was having this conversation, or maybe I'm thinking of possibly a Summoning Inside episode. Either way, this is a bit of a conversation that's been happening. That actually part of the reason these guys are
For God's sake, get to the point.
very experienced solo lanes, or at least very specifically for teams, which means that actually when a lot of teams don't know what they're doing come mid and late game, these guys will find ways to make gains for themselves in their lane.
Okay, cool.
And that's it.
That'll
That's
do.
the soundbite. We got
Yeah.
to it.
So
We finally got there after the various stuff. On
Holy
top
crap.
of that, I basically said I thought Boogie, who was a fantastic jungler who was coming over from the Flash Wolves, had looked very good on that team. Teaming up with Paz, who had been great towards the end of the last split, that duo would get a lot of wins off teams below them because I didn't think there was going to be a lot of competition with the top lane pool in the LJL. I was right about Boogie. I
Not to
was
this
wrong
extent,
about
though.
how they would use him.
yeah.
Yeah, but I was wrong about how they would use them. And actually, it was completely the other way around. They went for a bot lane dive focus. They went with Reyna and going on with a Thresh and going for aggressive attacks under the tower. They went with to join Echo's diving bot. That was how they played it. It wasn't around Paz. So I got it right, but possibly fortuitously because I
Paz
got
was
their playstyle
arguably
wrong.
the person who carried the least on this team in some ways.
Yeah, I
Yeah, he
agree.
played a lot of-
agree.
Actually, no, his Aatrox was really good when he picked it up towards the end of the season. Well, he
Into
started
the
doing
split.
better.
But his early
Yeah.
mid-season was very, very quiet.
It was, yeah.
And the
No,
grass
Boogie.
Aatrox for a while was odd.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the V3's wins, it almost always came down to just Boogie and Archer a lot of the times, with Reyna just offering support. We've got, I mean, V3 were the team that I believe were the ones that put Reyna on Yuumi and Boogie on Olaf, right? And they just ran through the jungle. Was that V3?
That was.
Did a bit of that.
No,
Sengoku
was-
Gaming as
that was
well.
That was Axis, I
That was
believe.
Axis,
actually.
okay.
It was quite popular, in fairness.
It happened a couple of times. I'm trying to remember. There was definitely a couple of Olaf Yuumi games from across the league, but yeah.
And now it would be Yuumi Graves, because Graves is just...
Oh, that sounds horrifying. Oh, don't even start. That sounds
Can't wait.
horrifying.
But I mean, we were. I think CGA. I think the reason that they kind of just ended up being myself at least. I'm not going to speak for Nymaera, but at least my fourth place team, because they've got players which we were kind of excited about. Nap has been in the region for, well, he's played in the league for
A while,
basically
yeah.
as long as DFM members, which is basically saying a lot. And outside of Yutori Muashi, is basically there's not a huge amount of people who have been around for that long, which is weird to say.
That's very consistent.
Yeah,
too. He
exactly.
doesn't always carry. He's very
Yeah, he is.
consistent.
We're also
That's
kind of
important too.
excited to see Arya play more. There have been some interesting moments from them, as well as Yoshi. We were excited for the, I think, mid up. Though, I think Initia1ise put a really good point for us about the bot lane of CGA.
Called it.
Yeah, let's have a look.
I have high hopes, but I don't think they're going to be the top of the top.
No, they're no.
I put them
Mid-table
in,
definitely.
Yeah, I've put them in 5th at the minute because I rate Arya and Gango. I think they're great players.
I think that's
I worry a little.
totally
I worry
fine.
a little bit about Gango and communication issues. 'Cause it'll be his first split in Japan, and that could be an issue.
Yeah,
and
did just think
actually-
about
And Yoshi and Grendel kind of stepping into some fairly big shoes to fill means me put them in slap bang in the middle because I think they're going to win some. I think they're going to lose some, and I think they're going to be a little bit volatile. That would be
And that's
perfect.
perfect. Yeah.
And I
Yoshi
think
and
I was
Grendel-
pretty spot on. Thank you.
I mean, it raises an interesting topic. Nymaera, you haven't actually spoken much about CGA, so I do want to throw it over to you for a bit of discussion.
So I didn't get much timestamps for myself because again we're trying to keep a balance between the teams and stuff. But I was really high on Gango, and I felt basically in a
Yes.
region like the LJL, this guy's super aggressive. He wins lane. He plays stuff like Draven and Lucian. We saw him pick them up, and in the early split, it looked like Gango would be playing towards that kind of style and just kind of styling on people. Didn't really continue towards the mid and late part, but yeah, I think the main story for CJ for me, particularly because Gango kind of picked it up towards the later. Well, not into the late part of the split, but in the postseason and stuff with the tiebreaker and everything else. Yoshi and Grendel stepping in some big shoes. They were question marks.
Big question marks, and arguably, then we now have answers. Frankly, Grendel was having Gango was having to play Callista, so he could then bring the Nautilus from Grendel back to safety. Because missed hook, get caught out in position, Callista ult to save, and that happened several times. across 2 different games, I recall rightly. It might be more,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
know
the
I know
one
for
versus-
certain I can stay twice. Which
There was a game versus Axes actually. It was the first time Axes brought out the Lysandra Jinx comp, and Grendel was basically just like
Jinx. This was
dying
Fabulous.
everywhere. This is versus Axes. And like, so then it was basically just like, and Corporal had a really good Thresh game catching him out. And basically, Grendel would just be there like, I'm dead again, guys. Can you fight around me? And it somehow worked, but it didn't make Grendel look very good. The rest of the team was just kind of picking up the pieces. And that's why they started defaulting back to stuff like Callista later on. You're definitely right about that.
Yes.
It didn't always help is the really scary thing. Actually, it turns out even Callista can't save Grendel on a bad game.
no, and I
He
mean,
did turn it around a bit, but like, yeah.
and I mean, a lot of it did just become the Aria show, sadly, for CGA, and
Yes, it did.
a lot of wins came
And what a
from
guy!
that man.
What a split that guy had, actually.
Oh, he was so
Actually,
good.
thinking back on it, I'm very surprised he managed to legitimately solo carry as many games as he did. You know, he's still such a fantastic player. Cannot wait to see what he makes this summer as well.
But that's going to be a podcast for the future in regards to talent elsewhere in our region. But yes.
I mean, I will give some credit to Yoshi and Grendel, who I said, substitute stepping into the main roster. It's a difficult task. Huge credit to the both of them towards the end of the split coming into playoffs, where they actually did step up and looked a lot more consistent.
They did.
It was just the regular season for large portions of it where they were both a lot more questionable or exploitable. But towards the playoffs, played well.
Got close though. They had to get a tiebreak to get in, and I'm glad they made it in. They made a really good run in playoffs. 2 best of 5s, which were very entertaining. So I'm glad I saw them there.
Yeah, 100%. And definitely, maybe with things shaking up after summer, you could definitely see this team rise up even further, especially with some of the talent, or maybe some of these players moving off. But you could definitely see some of these names definitely.
Maybe with a bit more tenure on the rookies, they could do something.
Exactly. I think that's a nice place to wrap it up with that 3. This was a 3, as I think has been made very clear to our listeners. We weren't quite sure where to put them. They were all over the place. There was a lot of different reasons to put different teams there. Yeah, we kind of got Rascal Jesters right, and yes, we've kind of already got Burning Core right, but we were very wrong about Axis in the grand scale of things. We also... V3 were definitely not the team we expected them to be, especially coming to the later weeks of the spring split, and then later in playoffs were just huge teams to be aware of, as well as also CGA. While we were partly very much correct about CGA, we were also very wrong about CGA in other parts. We did not expect potentially a superstar to be born from this team, so
Definitely not. Yeah.
Definitely a lot for us to take in.
Yeah, arguably, V3 and CJ, the reason we got them wrong is because of 2 fantastic individual performances out of jungle and mid.
Yes. The other reason we got them horrendously wrong... Oh god, this is gonna hurt for the next 5 to 10 minutes. How long we talk about this? Alright, I gotta rip off that band-aid now. Yeah, I keep doing this to you guys. I know how it feels. So we each placed the Hawks, as you heard earlier, in our top 3. Now, I was super high on the Hawks, and I had some camaraderie with it. And granted, we were all at least expecting some good things from the Hawks, but go on, Nymaera, just play this.
So I've got the Hawks in 3rd. So I've got the SoftBank Hawks in 3rd.
I also have them 3rd.
Whoa! Okay, so quick one.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah, that was my initial reaction. I was super high on the Hawks.
Amazing.
I mean, it's just kind of where it is. Do you want to... That was not exactly the soundbite I was expecting you to bring out. Do you mind doing...
He goes on further.
Do you mind doing the one above where it says the Hawks plus Lexi?
Oh, gotcha, yeah.
That was the one I was expecting to hear. I was like, But yeah, no, I think that sums it perfectly. These 2 weren't anywhere near as high on this team as I was.
So I've got...
soundbite.
Whoa! Okay, so quick one. That's why it's so bad that I've been pronouncing the name wrong. So Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks Gaming that's my team. I am going to be hardcore on them. I'm going to be like supporting them like I support TSM. I will buy their gear. I'm going to wear all their stuff. I'll be screaming SoftBank Hawks all the way through it. Don't worry.
We're getting some cheerleading pom-poms.
100%. If they have a mascot, I'll cosplay it. Like,
yeah, so
fully.
Okay, I'm sorry. I did not realize it got that
So
bad.
good. It
Oh
was
my
so good.
word, Lexi. How do
Oh.
you feel?
I mean, I feel like a TSM fan right now.
Oof. Okay. Oof.
I mean, it's not been a good fucking like 3 months for me as an esports supporter of team, like specific team. I've been an NA boy for pretty much all my life as a TSM supporter. God, that's just not the best place to be.
That's the tea.
And then I go, new region, brand new team, Hawks. I'll get in on a new team. I'm not going to be a glory chaser like Initial1ise. I'm going to pick a brand new team. And guess what? Maple Street was on my side. And I thought, you know what? They got some great talent with Ramune. I thought Dasher was going to be way better than he was. Turned out top lane was basically a 2-person show. And then everybody else was just kind of there. Unless you were Rayfarky or Ebby. So it didn't matter if you were Dasher at the end of the day. Yeah, you're a good mid laner, but that doesn't matter. And then for God's sake, bot lane was just... Play the honey clip, please. I hate to just jump around a bit, but let's just rip that band-aid off, because this is bad.
Hang on, where is it? Hang on.
I mean, Lexi, like, of course, we are flaming here a little bit, but you've got to remember, me and Nymaera both put the Hawks up in third. We had a lot of people, along with us, had the Hawks pretty highly rated.
So that one. Okay, so this should be this clip.
So, when it comes to Honey is a solo queue god. This man has achieved challenger #1 in the Korean solo queue ladder, right?
Talent there.
A very talented man, an AD carry main. This man is a god. But we have seen multiple times in multiple different regions. You can be your own region. You could be Korean. You can be Chinese. You could be any region #1 player. Start playing in the competitive and then you get stomped. You get put back in your place.
Like Gango.
But you can also be that exact same player. And the one I always pull back on because TSM. Wild Turtle. A solo queue god back in the day was basically didn't lose to anybody, was like stomping on double lift, and then in his first game gets a penta. Like you can have the extremes and like double lift, and like Wild Turtle is
or you
still.
could just say like Faker, who went out a bit.
All right.
Okay, and we'll stop it there. It goes on a bit long.
Because one, I don't want to compare him to Faker because Faker's Faker, and Wild Turtle I think is a fairer analogy. And currently, it didn't have his Wild Turtle performance in his first split. Did not win the region.
Yeah, I mean, like his first week was good,
fine,
and he just
it was fine.
struggled to make it work, really. And like, okay, and as much as we are really ragging on Lexi, and part of that's for entertainment's sake, all of us put the Hawks in our top 3, and we all take the fall for that. Everyone thought this team should be good. It did not happen. It was a garbage truck on fire.
We've
heading
analyzed
towards
this.
like, what is the 100-acre bot lane without Christopher Robin? Because that place was empty of leadership. Let's be real. Like, IKEA desk with none of the parts put together.
I mean, this was a team that basically, I think the reason they performed well in the first few weeks was we called this while it was happening. We think, oh yeah, they're just better players individually, mechanically, and they're just playing solo queue at the moment. That's what I think the LJL does for the first 2 weeks anyway, unless you're DFM where you're just naturally better as a team.
That's kind of a global phenomena, actually.
We saw it in NA, right?
Yeah, Spring Split tends to be this team where all the teams are ramping up. So if you come in with a better average level just because your players are just on fire and mechanically and stuff, it does give you good results. And the Hawks brought it out to an early good start, but we know what happened.
Let's be real. The bot lane was a dumpster. Mid lane was a dumpster. Jungle was actually, I think, the only redeeming quality. Top lane was, well, I've already said my thought on top lane. Basically, unless you're not Rayfarky or Ebby, you're not going to win many lanes. And if you're against anybody else, you're basically flipping a coin. But when the rest of your team is on a dumpster, what are you doing? You're putting a cherry. You're putting like one of those the cherries that you put on cakes, right? They're not even.
Oh, the glacé cherries.
They're not even the real cherries. You're putting like a shit cherry on top of it and hoping it's gonna make it better, and then it doesn't fix it.
And this one's got like a piece of glass in it, and you buy.
Yeah.
Why would I do this to myself?
Ramune
juicy 1v1. It's an Aurelia versus Gangplank. Oh no! What is this Olaf counter ganking me for the 3rd time in a row?
I think the biggest problem was everybody had such high hopes for the return of Ramune, and
Ramune briefly showed it.
Yeah, but briefly was not what we need when.
No.
Let's think about it. mid laners we're very, very, very high on, and I'm only going to say 3, are Pyrion, Arya, and Gariadu. Right? I'm not even mentioning Syros and other mid laners. That's just 3 mid laners who we were like interested or like nah. But come to the late of it, they were top of our power rankings, very high expectations going forward, very strong players internationally. Ramune was probably bottom.
Up there.
Probably
Yeah, I mean,
bottom. Or maybe he is tying with him. Right?
Well, yeah.
Not you,
Rocky
Rocky
was
rather.
bad.
Maybe Rocky.
Yeah.
It's just like that's the kind of
it's so
place
hard,
where you're
though.
at, right? Or like I mean,
Yeah.
Ramune was getting outperformed by Ace, and we had questions about Ace.
And the thing for me is like there was that one awful game where he picks Ari and just doesn't do anything, and it makes me really sad because I'm an Ari player and all this other stuff. But like it speaks to the mentality of the game where like you're trying to pick style points in the mid lane, and you do carry through mid lane every couple of games, which is where they got their wins from. But like most of the time, if you don't get anything going in mid lane and you didn't, game's lost.
Let's get a soundbite, if you wouldn't mind, Nymaera. The soundbite of Sam saying something about DFM. Yes, that one. Yes.
Gotcha,
Can we can we just do that one? Because I want Initia1ise to get a little bit brought down with the rest of us.
It's fair.
He can't always be at the very top of Mount Olympus.
No, I can't.
I believe I have it.
Very good.
All I'm saying is DFM have not changed a championship winning roster with probably arguably the best players in every damn role. Every damn role. Seros is a monster who brings out target bans every game. You never get to see his Karma. You never get to see his Heimerdinger. His Syndra is good. We've seen him pull out things like Illusion, right? This guy is really, really good. The only person who could compete with him is Ramune, who's been on the bench for a year. And he's on a team Only person with
Oh,
no
uh,
way.
uh,
He's
uh,
Ramune, Ramune, who was on their bench, was what I was going for.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a
In
lot
my
to be said
defense,
about this.
some of that stayed true for a little bit, and then for Seros, it stopped being true for a while, and then it kind of came back to being a thing.
I think I also like going a bit on a tangent. The terrifying thing is actually, like Saros and Ramune were not the story of mid lane this split. It was Arya.
No.
This guy came out the fucking rafters. and
Well,
just
it
blew
was
up the whole
arguably
show.
Arya and Pyrion and Gariadu.
Very towards the end of the split. Yeah, Gadiada.
Yeah,
No, you're
I
right,
can agree with that.
Like I genuinely,
Saros had a really good playoffs towards
Yeah.
the end of it. But
Yeah,
like,
sure.
These guys, I agree.
but I think you guys know my perspective of cool, being great for like 2 games in playoffs and 2 best of 3s in playoffs doesn't win me.
Yeah.
It's
No,
like
for sure.
I mean,
sure.
yeah. I mean,
do
like,
what Arya, do what Boogie's
Well,
been doing, do these
Yeah.
amazing things, or do what Emmy's
Yeah,
been doing on your fucking team in top lane.
right? And like, and there is something to this that, actually, where a lot of DFM can claim or could claim before this split that actually they were pretty uncontested in their roles. Seros and Steel have had stiffer competition. Does that suddenly mean they are bad players? No, they went 12-2 in the regular split. They had a bad best of 5, but they had 2 very good ones in playoffs. So like, they're still good players. It's just not as
I think
free as it was.
The only person who's like out and out still best in their role is Ebby. Everyone else can have a contest to it. I mean, like,
Oh, yeah.
That's great for the league.
you told me actually for the regular split was the better AD carry. When you come through to the finals, sure, yeah, Utapon really outperformed. Gang, I think Reyna, particularly on V3, has been really good too. Actually, so
Corporal was
every
pretty great.
one of these players
Corporal's
now
been
has
really
a fire
good,
lane. Yeah, every one of these players has someone they need to be aware of.
Yeah, and Vivid as well as like we
Yeah.
can literally go into every role and we could go to DFM and go, okay, we're gonna name 3 other players which we think can rival your current main roster player. Which basically means, as we've said throughout this podcast and throughout, very early in my prediction regarding Burning Core, this is a region that had just had a huge power spike just given to it. It was just thrown directly into their veins, and it's like being given to us. And like Barney Gumble, we're kind of drunk off of this power that has come through the LJL in this spring split, because so much happened. And
It did.
that's why it's so that's why the Hawks were what they were. I think they were kind of a product of just the environment. I think if maybe the Hawks came into a split in the 2019 or 2019 spring split, maybe it'd be different. Obviously, though, USG would still be there, and USG was still having middle of the road performances. Actually, they were having very good performance to then middle of the road, but
Yeah, they were back and forth.
Yeah, and I think part of it's meta and things changing, and again, maybe the schedule affected the Hawks. I'm wondering if a lot of it was backroom stuff. Obviously, we don't have information on that, but just the way everything fell apart and they couldn't recover, that speaks to me about coaching direction. I don't know whether the players meshed with that or the coaches meshed with that. And that is exacerbated by, as you were saying at the very start of the show, having such a condensed schedule and having so many games played in such a short space of time. Maybe that affected them disproportionately to some other teams, which did manage to adapt and overcome some of their issues, like Axes, like Rascal Jester, like so many of the other teams. So yeah, the Hawks really did not have a good split.
Yeah, let's just grab the next soundbite, because I think this is just going to kind of recap a few things. We might go between one or two soundbites quickly here, if that's okay. Teams are at this point as well.
Okay, so do you want to just see what... So my top three are in order, third to first. So the Hawks are in third, DFM are in second, and Sengoku are in first.
You're just crazy, man. You're just crazy.
Oh, whereas I've got the Hawks, then got Sengoku, and then I've got DFM first, which I cannot believe the rest of you are not doing.
I mean, that just really emphasizes that we were all really all about the Hawks, and then it just came down to where we were putting Sengoku and DFM. And I mean, to be honest...
I am denied about it, but I did put Sengoku first, and I stuck with it.
Yeah, I mean, the only crazy thing is I basically put the Hawks first, and then DFM, Sengoku, and then basically had a very similar pick to both these two, except I just decided to put the Hawks in first. We could all easily probably put the Hawks down into 8th place, move up Axis to the 6th place spot, and we actually basically called it. Now, obviously, that's changing two big teams. We were close, and outside of a team having a complete dumpster fire with very high expectations put upon them, I think we actually did a decent job, gentlemen.
Yeah, and to Nymaera's credit, like, he wasn't far off with Sengoku Gaming.
No, he wasn't.
They took a best of 5 off DFM, which
I can take some moral
very few teams have done.
I mean, with that said,
in the LJL especially.
I think that actually brings us over to a great soundbite for Nymaera actually himself.
Let me go get that.
Which really does kind of emphasize the fact of where Sengoku were kind of going with the overall game plan, as well as just kind of... Oh, go for it.
I got it. Yeah, I got it. Yeah, no, sorry. Champions, their champion pools are massive. I feel like their objective control and their objective gameplay has always been fantastic, and that will allow Sengoku to get to the point where they can team fight very well around a solid carry core of Pyrion and Yutori Miyashi. Yeah, that's pretty much it, basically.
Could you have been more right?
Control, yeah, basically, yeah. And it ended up being the story of Sengoku. They'd get early dragons, they'd have a very strong laning phase, not really rocking the boat, getting early dragons, team fighting well. And that's pretty much the story of Sengoku the split.
Eventually. Yeah. Early on in the split, it was a lot of Appamen on the side lane.
So bad.
They found the style you asked of them. Yeah, they found the style you asked of them. It took them a while.
I mean, I think that just speaks for the kind of the power that Sengoku were able to rely on. One of their the longest time player, actually, I think, on the roster of Appamen. Kind of being able to rely on a player like that to maybe give them that 1 or 2 extra win throughout the spring split, which kind of pushed them into that 2nd place spot and prevented V3 from stealing it away from them, or at least having a tiebreaker game versus them potentially, or however that actually gets worked out, I don't know. Yeah. But I mean, that's really good that they were able to rely on Appamen. I think that's a really good place. But then they were able to go into the next part. We're kind of now jumping around our last few little voice clips, blast from the past, as I'm sure Nymaera has been waiting for me to say this whole podcast.
Favorite thing. Why do I work here? It's because of that.
The blast from the
we get paid in.
I think we definitely need to make sure I do get taken down a few pegs with this soundbite regarding my hopes for
buddy.
Dasha.
Glutton for punishment.
Yeah, I definitely called it wrong. It was awkward, but I think it does emphasize the hopes that we had. Times as much to prove by doing these lanes. We switch lanes of professional players where they do lane swaps, and a lot of people, when they switch lanes, they have twice, if not 3 times as much to prove by doing this lane switch. So I think someone who is, in my eyes, phenomenal world-class kind of player, as such as Dasha, I think he's going to put twice as much effort. He was one of the best mid laners. He's got a lot of the fundamentals to bring over, and I think he's going to perform, especially when you now have the shoes. Like, you don't have to think about, oh, who's going to be my mid laner now. You've got Ramune, who is arguably one of the best mid laners that has ever played.
we'll leave it there. But that's fairly the point. Like, you had a lot of hopes for Dasher, and didn't quite turn out that way.
No, he was not a Rayfarki or Ebby. He was arguably worse than Paz and Apperman and Nap, which basically means where are you in the rest of it?
He was.
It's
he was
so
risky.
frustrating
I think that's
because
the way
you
I'd-
see the hints.
Huh?
Oh, has he died? Is that just me? I think Sam.
Oh, did I die? Oh, sorry. I think I cut off briefly. I'm still here if you can hear me,
It's just your webcam.
but I might have broken
is-
off a little briefly.
Your camera's fine.
Okay.
But yeah,
Oh,
no,
dear.
so basically,
I'll see what's going on with that.
I think the way I'd describe Dasher is he was risky. He played stuff like Aurelia. No one else played that this split, and he almost made it work some games. And
I'd
that's
agree with
such
that.
a bad way to put it, because basically what that means is that honestly it didn't work most of the time. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
and,
I
you know,
mean-
particularly that. Yeah, no, go.
I think part of it is really kind of this. We saw another roster do a swap lane, and it worked beautifully to some degree for them. We can see G2 obviously with caps and perks switching lanes. I mean, arguably a bigger difference to a degree between the bot lane and the top lane, between mid lane. With how they play and everything. Obviously, it's still blah, blah, blah. I'm not interested in going into really the level of everything. But we saw another, and they've switched back. Dasher, god damn, man. You just struggled, dude. He didn't play the typical meta champs that everybody else played. Got punished for it, and sadly didn't play around the map. And then just, I mean, God bless Tussle.
Yeah.
God bless Tussle. He tried so hard.
What game this really reminds me of is this first CGA game versus the Hawks when Dasher was playing Kale, and Kale was really big at this point. And honestly, Dasher liked to play as carries, and when they were more meta at the very start of the split, he could find some inroads into some of the late games and stuff. But then like there was this one moment where like a center W lands onto 2 carries, and he's got Kale all up, and he just doesn't cast it on Honey, and Honey gets nuked by a Zoe, and that was pretty much game over. And it's like the presence of mind from Dasher sometimes, and just the whole team, just to keep themselves safe and be on the same page, just wasn't there. It did feel what you said about Rascal Jester probably applies to the Hawks more so in terms of glorified solo queue. They played individually quite well. Pieces never came together.
Well, they were all in different books, never mind different pages. Like they wanted to play the game. Well, I say that, and I say that partly in humor, but partly because they all wanted to play the game kind of differently. You could see how much attention Dasher wanted. He was playing the likes of Aurelia into the Gangplank, and he wasn't getting the rest of the team kind of supporting the style he wanted to. You know, we saw what happened when Ramone and Tussle needed to play together. We saw what happened when the bot lane needed to play together. And it meant they were all on very different, play styles almost.
Yeah, and I mean, that was really emphasized when it came to their pick and ban phase. They almost seemed to pick and ban almost radically differently in different games against different teams, which, yes, okay, if you are the best team in the region, you can totally do that. You can pick and ban vastly different, ban differently versus one team to another, which is something all teams should do. But you also can pick different comps because oh, this team always struggles against our dive comp, so we're going to play a dive comp versus them because it will make we don't have to reveal external information about other strategies that we have. Because
for instance, V3 versus Axis, that's exactly what they did.
Yeah.
Actually, every time they played, that's what they did.
Which is the smart way to do it. Good management, good coaching stuff, and everything else will basically go like, this is how you guys play against this team, because you win, so why would we change it and reveal other champions and other strategies and everything? God damn, the Hawks couldn't even figure out how to pick up the book and go, alright, so we're going to do the standard playmaking of 3-1-1. Alright, we went for the hyper carry funnel bot lane. Alright, lads, well, we fucked it up already. Good job. And we've got top lane Aurelia, we got bot lane Master Yi. Fuck it, that didn't actually happen, but it might as well have happened in the grand scale of things. How it went.
I do feel like, I think Tussle was pretty fine, actually.
Yes,
like,
Tussle was the only redeeming factor for that team.
I'm going to try and throw out a load of caveats here because, like, I don't want to slam everyone because it's such a sucky team, and finishing in 8th really sucks. Particularly, okay, the LJL got stronger. We expected so much out of the Hawks, though. For me, like, Pooh had some really good moments on Peel's supports. He never showed that anywhere else, but his Peel supports were good, right?
Yep.
Like, he had, like, 1 or 2 really good Braum games, but, like, it just wasn't multifaceted. Honey had some good Aphelios games, but just couldn't. People weren't playing around him particularly well. Ramone and Tussle, on the whole, one of the better mid 2v2s when they got going.
But they didn't get
happened
going.
So few far in between. I think Tussel's the real loser of the situation because he played really well on the whole. We even had him as some player of the weeks actually.
Yes,
Yeah.
no, Tussle was definitely their best player by a country margin in comparison to what he offered to the rest of the team, and I think that's a really good way that you kind of put this, Nymaera. Tussle was kind of put to the wolves when it came to comparison between the other players on the team. Tussle was just far months better.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, for me, it was really sad, right? Because I came in a huge fan of the duo of Ramone and Tussle. I was so excited to see that duo back together. And we kind of saw what happened if they ever got a lead. But, like,
how often did
the
that
problem
happen?
was, like, the point is, once teams got better and they weren't getting free leads, the Hawks just didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
You know, comparing that to the other two teams we had in our top three, you know, it's night and day difference, right? Whenever DFM or Sengoku had a lead, they would just run away with it and they could close out a game. It's really good to see that, by the way, because that's a talent you want to take to the international stage, amongst other things. Like, I think Blank Empyrean took them a long time to get that synergy going, but reached like week 5 or something, week 5, 6, they look very impressive.
But imagine if they had 11 weeks to do that, and it wasn't between 1 month that they had to do this. It was between 2.5 months. That kind of story one we can tell as a broadcasters and content producers, because I do think of us a little bit more biased, obviously, but also just like the teams themselves, just overall quality of play can only go up, right? Like if MSI happened and DFM or Sengoku went, either of the two who made the finals, they've played more games. We know who the better players are.
Hell, I'd take 9 weeks at least. Just give us at least once a week rather than like multiple times a week.
Yeah.
That'd be true. That'd be true. I think Nymaera, you actually raise a really good point when we talk about DFM and some of our expectations moving forward. Why only Initialize actually had them as the first place team?
Able to increase their levels of play. So my problem with DFM, if we send them to an international event, is the liquid problem, where you just sometimes expect that DFM will win lanes. And what do they do when they don't win lanes? What happens when Ebby, when he's on NAR, just actually doesn't win? I think that's a good place to end it there. But, like, it's a very simple point. Like, DFM, if you don't win lanes, what are you doing? So do you guys have any particular memories of games where they managed to do something with it?
They only lost 2 games. One of them, we already know my thoughts in regards to the V3 one, where they just drafted horribly and then put themselves in an awkward spot to begin with. And then against Sengoku, they kind of lost fair and square after a really good fight.
Yeah.
And that was it. Every other game when they fell behind, they found a way back. So it's not even like you can be like, oh, they lost lane, they lost game. No, they lost lane, they could win game.
And I'll tell you why I think that's possibly for is actually I do think there was an element of the coaching coming in pretty huge here for DFM. They had the synergy there already, so they knew what they didn't have to work so hard on fundamental synergy basics. They could start thinking a little bit higher. And I know before Nymaera had really called out the LJL saying, these guys cannot 1-3-1 to save them. One of the only teams in the LJL to really successfully, consistently 1-3-1 in the league has been DFM.
Eventually, first couple of weeks were sketchy.
Yes, no, exactly. But we saw that improvement, and like the fact that kind of thing where they actually started to prove some higher level ways of winning games and tearing things apart when things weren't as simple as I've won the lane, wonderful. We run down these towers, wonderful. I've got all the dragons, game's over.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
That kind of additional weapons in your arsenal is pretty big, I think.
And the thing for me is actually, like, if you look at the 2 playoff series they had against Sengoku, this is where this problem, you see both sides of it, actually, where Sengoku had really good grasp on their win conditions in the first series they had against them. It was still a 3-2 in a lot of ways, right? In a lot of ways. Yes, it was a 3-2. That is the way you say that, Alex. But, you know, they lost 3 games fair and square, and a lot of that was off of fair laning, where they just got outlaned. Whereas in the finals, you know, it was particularly game 1, actually. We saw that Saros losing mid lane. It didn't matter. They played really, really well. They rallied around his typical Heimerdinger pick, which we hadn't seen the entire season because it had been banned. And it showed to me, actually, you know, in terms of me and, like, well, you know, asking the question, what happens? What's happening with this? I think they have managed to evolve with their coaching staff and kind of get to a point where I'm much more happy with them.
I mean, I think if DFM didn't, they would have fallen into a burning core problem, and they definitely could have fallen down the table and taken some losses. While, yes, their individual players are just pretty good, so they can get those early wins, as we saw some of the other teams in the region do, against just lesser mechanical players in the grand scale of things, or just potentially just teams having to try and learn how to work together. DFM already have that head start on everybody else, so they know they can do all this kind of thing. Coming into the very end of the finals, DFM only ended up having one win over Sengoku between all of the games they had said and done, which is looking really good because they're getting challenged it more than ever before. Well, not more than ever before, but like in this new age. Well, no, because they've lost previously in spring splits versus.
There was Rampage and Pentagram and USG who
Okay,
were competitive at various points.
Results.
So,
in terms of results, yeah.
But now
I know
this
what you
is a spot where DFM potentially have to keep this rhythm going because they can't let up, or someone like V3, someone like Sengoku, someone like CGA, if some of the problems we've been identifying get solved, Axis could take it away from them. And while that would be an upset in the grand scale of
What a
things,
wild ride.
we would also be like, well, they solved the problems that we as analysts and casters have been able to identify, meaning that if there's other things behind the scenes, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Like, if you go to each of these contender teams, right, you know, say like the top 6 that made playoffs,
top
right?
6, yeah.
How much of a percentage would you give to any of those teams on a good day taking a best of 5 in a finals versus DFM? I mean, after this split, it'd probably be lower for me because, you know, I look at the way that they prep for the best of 5 and say, actually, damn, these guys played well. But, you know, I'd still give, you know, like
the time thing's still
25% chance to Sengoku or a 20% chance to them.
I mean,
maybe like
the time and patch split changes so much. As we covered so much in our previous episodes, so we won't go over that. But I get what you're saying, and I think that's fair.
Like, yeah, no, there are contenders to the throne, and like, it's not like a. It's not a bit. It's actually not like a comedy bit. It's like it's not us doing it for entertainment. I'm actually sat here going like, good chance one of these guys could represent Japan internationally.
Complacency kills the king, and you know, if DFM get complacent or get the wrong read, you know, get the wrong information on something, we have seen them fall, right? Like they did lose a best of 5.
I think that's a really nice place where we can end with a quote from our very own Nymaera, who kind of just really puts a nice bow on this. Even though it's halfway through the podcast, it's a nice way to kind of put this as where we are now as the LJL.
I would say that the LJL classifies as one of the stronger emerging regions now. They haven't always done well internationally and transferring that onto an international stage, but you know, there's a lot of talent here, and I can't see them out-muscling a lot of these very talent-filled rosters.
I think that's a really nice.
Do you agree, guys? Do you agree?
Yeah.
Is the LJL classified now as a stronger emerging region? What would you say to that?
I think we need to have another split. I think putting all of our eggs in one basket, saying that the LJL is now significantly stronger. I think we need to see a repeat performance between a lot of these players. We need to see Boogie do as good as the split again. We need to see Ardia can keep the church going. We need to see DFM perform to the high level again, and Sengoku rival for them for that. And this could be, we saw a glimpse of potentially what a competitive split and spring split will be. What can summer offer?
Oh, for sure. Because teams build throughout a year a lot of the time, right? And, you know, we saw in the VTS, it's no longer, so Gigabyte Marines lost in the finals, 3-2.
They did.
They are no longer a one-team region. We saw DFM lose in their upper bracket before they won in the finals. This is no longer a one-team region. We also saw V3 take a game off them in playoffs and regular split. You know, this is not a one-horse race. There are multiple here. Is one ahead of the others? Sure.
Yeah.
The style and level of play we've seen is really high comparative to what I'd expected coming into the split.
Yeah. I mean, let's think about the other competitors if we're talking emerging regions, minor regions. OCE. VCS, LCL, the big boys within that space. Turkey, perhaps, another good call.
Yeah, Brazil as well.
Yeah, like these guys who, like, there are some teams that have come out of these at various points in time that have looked pretty good. Supermassive, right, when they had GBM and all the likes of that. We've seen what Flash Wolves we can do. LCL has had Albistox Lewis, had Gambit for crying out loud. Like, at various points in time, like at one point, Gambit were one of the best teams in the world. We're talking 8 years ago now. But, like,
Moscow 5.
So, like, I think the LJL has pride enough to stand up and fight with those guys. Can they win it? Yeah. Would it be easy? Hell no. But like, I think there is talent enough to bring people a little bit low and humble some teams that wouldn't be expecting it. We've already seen what Ebby can do on a Gnar versus Vizichachie. I'd like to see it a little bit more consistently.
I think the big thing for me, just the last kind of point on this, is like, it's not just that the level of play is good, and I think it is good. It's just that the variety of play is also good. And we've seen some teams stumble on international stages when their region only tends towards one style. I'm particularly thinking of some of the Korean teams coming out of their regions and not playing as hyper-aggressive teams. We have that in the LGL. We have control teams in the LGL. We've got some weird mad maniac teams in the LGL too, like Axes and Rascal Jester with their weird drafts. You know, CGA, V3 being hyper-aggressive.
Yes.
And then DFM Sengoku being the measured style with the objective-based gameplay. And all of them have competed with each other. They all have to practice against that, and it's only going to make the region stronger.
It only is. And I mean, I think it's the kind of thing we will now need to wait for Worlds till we can actually see the LJL actually get some international play. I mean, we've already given our thoughts that we do think there should be at least some form of regional tournaments between some of the smaller regions. But especially due to location, it's not crazy to get the Oceania teams over to Japan or vice versa, especially with potentially using Hong Kong as a halfway point, and then you can do all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, there's loads of options if someone is interested in actually running those tournaments, and hopefully Riot Games once the pandemic...
Well, there's one between China and Korea, which is coming up.
Yeah.
Top 4 seeds from both each one. It's going to be really fun to watch.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to see some of the minor regions actually get that. And kind of really...
that'd be so cool. Because Rift Rivals was really big for the minor regions.
Yeah, it was. But, I mean, obviously MSI not happening, obviously, for obvious reasons. We can't do much about that. I do hope that we're not just talking in an echo chamber, seeing that the LJL is playing pretty well and they're doing things that we're seeing in other regions, and it's actually not just like 2 steps below and it's actually just the same as EU Challenger.
That would be very disappointing.
That would be, that would be. But until we actually see them play, I do have to put some reservation until we actually see them play.
I wonder if I continue that quote, because I reckon I speak about that in a bit, way back when, in episode 1.
What the...
Yeah, I mean, like, let's be real. The VCS is probably stronger. The LCL is probably stronger. They can compete with everyone else, I feel. I mean, like, Turkey, Latin America, you know, are good too, and we've seen great teams come out of there. But, you know, actually at the top end of the LJL, I think they probably are quite competitive.
Well, I mean, we saw DFM take a game off of Splice, and anyway, it doesn't go on as much as I thought it would do. But yeah, like, you know, we had the caveats even back then. And it's so hard to make any statements like that without just seeing the damn results. That's the main thing. And it is what you're saying. We've got to wait to Worlds. It sucks that we don't have MSI. It sucks that we don't have a minor tournament either. But that's just the way it is.
Yeah. And we also don't have privy information to potentially how the players are playing against other players on Korean solo queue. Yes, we can try and find it, but we only know about one account at most. So these players probably can just get another account with relatively a click of their fingers. It's not quite as easy as that, obviously, but it is kind of a place. But I think, gentlemen, when we actually look at our predictions,
we did okay.
I think we did all right. Some better than others. Well done, Initia1ise. But I think we actually did okay, minus the Hawks and Axis a little bit.
Oh man! But the thing is that, like, it's the reason doing esports is so great is that you do have the outliers. Sorry, carry on.
I finished my point. I was letting you guys talk.
My bad. But yeah, just the outliers make it interesting.
And how bold a call would it have been? How bold a call would it have been to get the Hawks and Axis where they are?
Yeah.
Pretty...
I couldn't have done that.
I don't know how much if you guys would have flamed me for putting Hawks down in last
we would.
place.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to do it. So sometimes you have to...
I mean, I know where I'm putting them coming into summer at the moment. I've got an idea, and...
Oh, that's the thing to think about. We're going to have to do that at some
yeah.
point.
Oh, yes, gentlemen and
Let's wait to see where rosters are going to be, but like, oh no.
Oh, yes, listeners, 1 week before the first week of the 2020 spring split, we will be doing our power rankings going into the LJL 2020 and our expectations. Remember, we'll be doing who we expect to win the region all the way down to who we think might miss playoffs and all of that in between. That's going to be an interesting exercise. And yes, we will of course do it all individually, and then we will come together for much arguing, as you can experience through this podcast. It's a podcast that gives us 2 episodes, really. That's how it works.
Right.
Oh, so content.
content is king. I do want to pass it over to my illustrious co-hosts and casters for any closing thoughts regarding predictions or any other kind of topics around this.
I think we covered it. I think anything I say at this point would be a little extraneous.
No, I actually want to praise all of us actually for making some good points way back when. You know, like we didn't have the best resources coming into it. You know, we weren't like watching every single game in the 2019 season, but we actually came out with some pretty solvent stuff. And considering we managed to talk about it for so long, we did all right, didn't we?
I mean, we talked about it for far too long in the grand scale of things. This episode's
we're
going
learning.
to be clocking in a lot faster than that episode, thankfully. And
Good.
I think that's just where it falls in the grand scale of things. I'm really happy with our predictions, and that does set us up, though. We have to continue this kind of consistency. We're doing pretty good already with vaguely calling teams. I mean, Sam basically was on the money except for the Hawks and Axis. I was pretty close with Hawks, Axis, and as well as Nymaera. We're all very close to all of them. Like, at most
I was the
one
worst out of
placement
us.
off. But yeah, but...
Even then, not too far off.
Yeah, one placement off, basically. And, like, if we count points, it goes Initialize, myself, and Nymaera, basically 1 point between all of us. Like, that's how close. And we all lost points for Axis and the Hawks.
Huge.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, it all comes down to that at the end of the day. So, expect us to try and call this again, but maybe with a higher performance, as well as also potentially expect some form of pick'ems to be coming in for our weeks when we pick our games. That's something we've been talking about on the side. Whether we can get it on the actual production is that's a whole nother thing for our illustrious
We'll try and figure it out.
graphics artist, Mr. Penguaru, to worship at their altar, as it would be, and be like, "Sir, give us beautiful assets." But instead of question time, instead of meta talk, instead of small talk, we're going to have our one-off, maybe, not sure, breaking news section. Breaking news with Initia1ise, Nymaera, and Alex, because I forgot my own name. With that all said, we do have to sadly give you all lovely listeners the news that Rocky, the mid laner for Burning Core, has announced their retirement from competitive play, which now has filled a void for potential new mid laners in the starting roster for Burning Core. Now, they currently already have 2 import slots already used, so if they are planning on doing any form of changes, they would either need to find another Japanese mid laner, or we could also be seeing potentially a swap out from one of these other spots, potentially bring a competitor from either the support role or the jungle and put them into the mid lane as an import. Though this does link us with some other news that we've been seeing. And that is that the player that I got horrendously wrong with my thoughts is actually back to playing the mid lane. Dasher is playing a lot of games in solo queue. And could this potentially be Ramune or Dasher Burning Core? Gentlemen, I'm going to pass this over to you to kind of go through this part, because I've said the actual news itself.
So, first things first, Rocky, congrats on your tenure in the LJL. You've been an entertaining player to watch. Didn't end up the way you wanted to this season, but, you know, I really enjoyed your LeBlanc. It was really cool. You did some good stuff.
When he got it.
Yeah, he got it, exactly. But yeah, no, so we are speculating on Dasher going back to mid lane. His solo queue is almost all mid lane right now. And we have some info that a lot of the teams are starting to ramp up the amount they're working. So if you're going to be playing mid lane in solo queue, good chance you're going to be playing mid lane in the split. So working off of that assumption, we think, okay, Rocky is gone. There is a mid lane starting spot open in the LGL. And Dasher or Ramune will be moving to be moving out of the Hawks.
We're assuming.
There'll only be one mid laner. So where does that leave us, Sam?
Yeah, and let's also make a bit of a frank statement. Burning Core, we're struggling for consistent carries in the mid and late game. Their AD carry Yuhi, their mid laner Rocky, were not putting up fantastic numbers. And that was making a lot of work for the support, the jungle, the top lane. We've talked about the Hawks issues kind of today.
God bless that.
Yeah.
You really
but effectively, both teams...
Just don't give him Darius.
No, Darius.
Sorry, Sam. Sorry, I had to.
Right.
I'm sorry.
No, it's good. You're right. You're absolutely right. Because there is something to this, actually. That actually, if both teams want to compete, and there's a lot of talent on these rosters, you hope, If they want to compete, they need to change something because it's not working right now. Bringing Dasher back to a mid lane role where he's more comfortable and can make some of those crazier plays and a little bit more safety with a little bit more jungle attention makes sense. Switching out for the Hawks or the Hawks as well. Like, they are struggling to find a coherent plan. Switching out
They're struggling to find
too many
anything.
cooks. Yeah. Removing a chef from the kitchen makes sense. Getting another, like consistent carry in for Burning Core makes sense. So a roster change between those two teams would make a lot of sense.
And forgive me if I'm wrong. We did our podcast episode when we talked about changes we'd make to each roster. Did any of you guys make a change to Burning Core which was relevant to this?
Oh, I thought so.
Did one of us choose Ramune to go towards Burning Core?
I do think that's echoing a fact of what we
Might
said
have been.
earlier. It would have been.
Was that or Yutori Miyashi? I think would have been the other one we might have thought of.
I believe that was the call. Yeah.
I think I was the one that was saying not for Yutori Miyashi. I think I was the one that was like.
Yeah. So, Lexi, are you actually psychic?
I mean, I am the Hawk super fan, right? So maybe I am privy to just hearing of the Hawks. That is, maybe who did Honey? I think I put Honey as their winner. I mean, for God's sake, anybody could be the winner of that team. No, really, it's just goddamn Tussle. I feel so bad for that man. Maybe Tussle came to me and he said, "Hey, mate, stuff's got to change, all right? Ramune didn't have such a good one. Dasher was just hard inting, but he sometimes won lane. So, we're going to put him back down to mid lane. Ramune is going to go over to Burning Core because he's sick and tired of us infighting anyway. That's a joke. That's a joke. We don't know of any infighting, by the way, from the Hawks. I'm just doing a bit here. Need to be clear, I'm doing a bit. And then it's like, okay, what happens? Well, now you get a very tenured player off the roster, which we've seen in some places can be very good because sometimes that helps.
Pressure. Yeah.
Or sometimes that can be incredibly bad because they were the only one that actually had a head screwed on. So, I mean, it'll be a 50-50. That also does mean we have a slot then potentially opening in this hypothetical for top lane in the Hawks, which arguably pretty open. That does take an import slot away, but you could arguably just tell Honey to go home and to import a top laner and then fix bot lane.
Dasher is a Korean resident.
Dasher is, yeah.
Which means that if you get rid of Dasher, you can still have a Korean. You can have a Korean top laner for the Hawks if you wanted.
Yeah,
that would be something that might happen.
You could. I mean, there's a lot of options because you have Tussle. Your team by default is already like stretching the facts of it. I mean, minor region import slot in other minor regions are allowed, so potentially maybe another Oceania player. I mean, I would be open to the idea of another Oceania player because Corporal has definitely set the stonework down that guess what?
He played well. He had a good season.
Yeah, he had an amazing season. So if he's having an amazing season, obviously we're aware he can speak Japanese to so that would be important.
That help.
Obviously.
Well,
but
let me throw a pie in the sky name out for you guys. Who is a former world champion who played on Invictus Gaming, who no longer has a team and is Korean? What? Duke is currently without a team.
Oh,
he is a fantastic top laner.
That is so cool.
I would be.
Season 6 world champion.
Can they afford him? I guess he's not on a team, so
he's not on a team. So like his off, maybe he gets more offers. But that's just. I mean, it's a pie in the sky. But like I'm just saying, like there are some names that if you can get the money together.
Yeah. Just be aware that basically the Korean Challenger circuit is going to be opening
exactly,
which is because it's going into this franchise league for the LCK. A lot of Korean players who are currently abroad might come back towards that. Going to be probably more money in terms of the salaries there. So there's a big draw from that. So maybe you have to draw from your home talent tram because the draw from the Korean Challenger League is going to be more. But no, anyway, it's just an interesting food for thought because like I think we're of the opinion any change for the Hawks is likely to be an improvement right now. Yeah. At least have a honeymoon phase.
They need to do something.
Yeah, they need to do something, and potentially like I'm trying to remember back when we did our podcast episode. One of us said to remove Dasher. I'm trying to remember if it was you, Sam.
I did. I think
Sam hates Dasher. He hates him.
He
doesn't hate him.
I didn't hate him. I just didn't like the way he played with the team.
Yeah. No, I think
he did hard in a lot of games.
Right.
But then the rest of the team were doing it as well, so it's like
it is again. I'm gonna quickly caveat that because I don't really like that. Sometimes when top lane falls behind and your team is just not playing around top lane at all, top lane legitimately has no tools to defend themselves.
Yeah.
You're playing weak side of top lane and you just want to start fighting. Every fight you take is a bad one, and then you just end up just slowly just falling into the abyss.
Yes.
And that happened a lot of times to the Hawks this
Killing me
season.
softly with his sword. Definitely felt like that every time anyone came up with an Ornn and they're just like smashing Dasher, who never got his Lucian. Never got his Lucian, that man. Never got it once. And it's like, no shit. If you have one trick and we're going to ban you and now you become a middle of the tier top laner, which Wraith Arky and Ebby never had to think again. And then it became pretty in flip a coin against the rest of them at best.
That's something actually.
It raises questions.
Do you know how many years you have to be a resident?
Minimum of 3 years, above 5 years is normally the idea.
Oh, right, because once, Korean jungler, he joined in like 2016.
So he possibly resident.
Coming up
is not a resident yet, but maybe he gets residency soon. I'm not sure if they've applied for that, but there's definitely something which could happen there. But yeah, basically the problem is there are 2 Korean imports currently on Burning Core, so Dasher would not be able to be in that starting lineup. So anyway, so food for thought. We are going to see roster changes. That's the big takeaway, regardless of any speculation. And these are roster changes potentially to the 2 bottom teams, which means technically we could have again a stronger league if both these teams improve. So once
Could
again,
be a 7-way tie for second, not just a 5-way tie for fourth.
I don't want that. I don't want to have to do a double tiebreaker stream. That sounds horrible.
We have to have a whole day of tiebreakers.
That sounds horrible. Because that just means we're a league that has just basically plateaued when it comes to power level. It's gone up, but we've plateaued still. There's always meant to be a curve when it comes to placements, players. That's what you always have, the natural curve where you get the 0.001 whatever. And yes, okay, a lot of the players currently, when it comes to solo queue, some of the best, and this is because I was looking over their accounts recently, I'm not a stalker, I just like to do it for analytical and journalistic sense. Corporal has a master account, definitely, like, top, I think when I looked last time, was top 0.00... 4,000, like 400, 500.
When it gets to master, it's a very low percentile.
Yeah. I haven't looked at half of them. Ebby, Grandmaster, top 200 and something in the region in Korea. Like, Ebby is just a talent. I honestly, the more I talk about Ebby, the more I'm like, how much longer is he going to stay on DFM?
Well,
because
depends how much you love Japan. I mean, we can have another conversation about that, about Japanese culture and its homogeneity.
I guess it'll depend about the business management too, right? Because we know there are big viewers for the Japanese league and it's only increasing, right?
Yeah.
And that presumably means more money's coming into it. But what's happening with that money? Is it being managed well and all the other stuff?
Is it going to the players? Yeah.
Is it going to the players? And, you know, how much of it is loyalty, as Sam was saying? How much does everyone stay in Japan? You know, there is stuff about cultural... you know, there's cultural problems when you, well, not problems, but like challenges you have to overcome by moving to it. Yeah, because like I know even myself, if I moved to a different country, I'd struggle probably because I've only lived in the UK all my life. I don't know about these other players. True. You know, that's a big thing to consider.
From a guy who's done it, it's hard, especially when you don't know the language.
Yeah, that would be the one that I'm not sure of because obviously I've only lived abroad for a short period of time and it was in an English-speaking country. And while I desperately would love to go back, to LA, where the land of the
Paradise City.
Yes.
The grass is green and the girls are pretty.
Yeah, but also the land of sins for obvious reasons as well.
Oh boy,
it's a whole nother thing for the League of Legends scene when you come to talk about sins. But we are going to really miss Raki, and also me having to pronounce it in that sense. I'm actually going to miss that, because I start learning all the players' names, and I actually get it down, because Initia1ise and Nymaera correct me, and now they leave. I'm like, God damn it. The last thing I don't want, though, is Yutori Moashi changing his name again.
To actually change it to Yutori Miriashi or whatever.
Not dealing with that. I can't believe he'd already changed it once, and he could change it again.
He could.
But that's going to be some interesting information, and that does close our news section. I do want to pass it over, as always, to Nymaera and Initia1ise for any closing thoughts from both of them.
So, this is episode 15, done and dusted. We have capped off an entire spring split. We can put that into the record books. Everything is now in a very collated file of casts and podcasts that we've done. And like, yeah, it's been a challenge getting it all done, but it has been done, and I'm glad I've had these two lovely people to do it alongside.
Oh, you're too sweet. I mean, also just like for this episode, it's been fantastic fun to go back and listen to some of our slightly naive views on the LJL, and sometimes we kind of got it right too. So perhaps we put the Hawks a little lower down next time, guys.
Maybe.
Well, we'll have to wait for full rosters to fully know where I'm placing them, but I don't know if the first place spot might be a little bit ambition from my eyes and my placement for next time. And yeah, this has been a great podcast. I've thoroughly enjoyed listening over, trying to gauge what we thought several months back now, and taking that from now. I mean, what, 15 episodes? That's almost 4 months, because we do weekly podcasts, so it's over 3 months.
Huge.
So it's kind of crazy to think that we've been talking this consistently about the LJL, but that's why I keep dragging them out of the basement and throwing them in front of their computers, as we do. As always, you can find this podcast, though, on all of our major streaming platforms, as well as audio platforms and any of your podcast hosters. By all means, to please rate us 5 stars over on the Apple Podcast, because it does help with visibility and everything else when it comes to that podcast point of view. Obviously, all of these thoughts are of our own, and obviously, as the skitten earlier, we have no affiliation with Riot Games nor any of their partners, and this podcast is funded completely by our own backs. So we do it all. Obviously, as I've said, always take care of yourselves. It's still pretty wild out there, and just look after yourselves. Just look after yourselves. But with that all said, for Nymaera, Initia1ise, and myself, MaskedSwan, thank you so much for listening and or watching, and we'll be back next week with another podcast. Take care.
Yeah.